How far would you be willing to fake an artistic career? Well, with the rise of generative AI, this has been a question on many people's minds. And the reasons are many. It could be for validation, for fame, for money, or all of the above. This is why, over the last few years, there has been a rise in fake artists using techniques that no one could have ever conceived just to try and convince people that they actually can draw. But none would take it as far as the user Chokopaii. She would take it to the next level by figuring out an exact formula that she can replicate on as many accounts as she wants to. It would always start out the same way. Draw sexy and appealing fan art of characters that come from very passionate fandoms, make enough of a buzz online due to these fandoms, and then start charging money for different services. Here's Chokopaii's Patreon, for example, in which she has 2 tiers, with the lowest one being $10 per month. As of today, she has over 180 paid members, people who are giving her money thinking that she draws real art. But that's not all. This was for behind-the-scenes content, for brushes, for tools, pretty much exclusive content. What if you actually wanted her to draw something for you? Well, on one of her many different accounts in which she pretended to be her own sister, telling everyone that she was 15 years old, she would charge $700 for a full-body commission, all while having an NSFW Patreon after having told everyone that she's 15. I wish I was making this up. But of course, this wouldn't be enough to satisfy Chokopaii. Because as I had mentioned, she had figured out the formula. This is why over the last few years, she would make multiple different alt accounts, specifically 9 different accounts that we know of, in which she would rinse and repeat the same formula. Make sexy fan art, get a massive fandom to give you engagement, and then once you reach a big enough reputation, start charging money for different services. If another artist notices, if another artist points this out, then you discredit them and sometimes go as far as doxing them. And bonus points, if that artist happens to be pregnant, then make jokes about them having a miscarriage, something that Chokopaii would do more than once. All of these things are allegations made by Teru, an artist who has been keeping tabs on Chokopaii's behavior, her alt accounts, her art progression, the way she operates, and on June 14th, after many months, would release a Google Doc exposing Chokopaii and her best friend Nyanyaqwi of tracing, scamming, doxing, and a multitude of different things. The document itself is over 100 pages, and it's a work of art, formatted beautifully with different sections, color codings, and GIFs. It does its best to provide proof in regard to the accusations made against Chokopaii and her friend, as well as, more importantly, pointing out the red flags you should look out for when trying to commission an artist. So due to the rise of AI, and the significance of this topic affecting so many people, I figured we had to talk about it. And so without further ado, let's do this. Alright, so when you go to Chokopaii's Twitter account, the first thing you notice is that they joined the website on October 2025. Don't let that fool you though, because they've been doing this for a while. As I said in the intro, they have many different accounts, with some created earlier. And if we were to go back in time even further, then you'd find that she's been active in Russian-speaking communities for even longer. If you browse Twitter, especially if you're in certain fandoms or seem to like fan art a lot, then you've probably already seen the things that she posts on your feed. This high level of engagement has allowed her to build quite a following on her main account on Twitter, as well as on other platforms like her Instagram. If you go to her Patreon, not only can you subscribe, but you can also buy her brushes. This is aimed for people who want to emulate her style. So far, this has been a success, seeing that she has over 180 paid members on her Patreon and can charge over $700 for a single commission. Another person of interest in Teru's document is Nyanyaqwi, otherwise known as Maria, someone who's also been around for a while and who is a close friend to Chokopaii, emulating her exact strategy in building a following and then selling products. And so this is where Teru comes in, an artist that's had their eye on both Chokopaii and Maria, and who's exposed other AI tracers in the past, like Asami, an AI tracer who had gone as far as using a chroma key to hide an entire color from a drawing time-lapse in order to hide the fact that they were tracing right then and there. Now, Teru didn't come out with this document about Chokopaii randomly. They've been calling them out for a long time. In fact, as far back as October 29th, 2025, when they would quote tweet one of their suspected alt accounts by the name of Michi and say, showing layers means nothing when you're tracing AI. Posting a time-lapse is better proof, except you had tried that with your previous account, Chokopaii Art, and people didn't buy it back then either. And it clearly didn't work with your Mashiro account, so maybe just stop tracing? Smiley face? So even as far back as October, Teru was implying that yes, Chokopaii had alt accounts and that she was trying to do this multiple times. But that wouldn't be the only time that Teru would directly call out Chokopaii before releasing their document. Here's a tweet from March 22nd, 2026, in which they say, imagine being such a disingenuous fraud, posting this and pretending that your improvement is genuine when you're just a pathetic slop-rater. You're spitting on the face of artists who actually put effort to improve, so next time maybe compare it with your real art while adding Chokopaii. In the image posted, Teru would show us the old art of Chokopaii, in which there was some light progression, versus the incredible leap of skill that we see from 2024 to 2025, in which Teru alleges that Chokopaii started using AI full-time. In fact, Teru would say it themselves. Typical AI grifters suddenly gaining 10 years of experience after 2024 and still clinging to their delusions, trying to pretend that they've put half the effort to develop that skill. You love to see it. Now look, the artist community despises generative AI. What they despise even more, arguably, is people trying to pass off generative AI as their real art while also charging for commissions and products, like brushes on Patreon. So Teru wouldn't be the only one to call out Chokopaii's behavior in the last few months or even year. They would, however, be the only person willing to make a long, well-formatted Google Doc while presenting what they think is irrefutable proof that both Chokopaii and their best friend, Nyanyaqwi, are AI tracers, running multiple accounts at the same time and trying to scam as many people as possible, hoping to take down this facade once and for all. On June 14th, they would post, Chokopaii and Nyanyaqwi have been tracing AI across many alt accounts. From fraud to harassment and doxing, here's how to spot similar accounts that are selling traced commissions. They would then continue saying, back in October of last year, I quote tweeted a post from one of the accounts involved. All this time, I've been stressed from the fact that I was publicly denouncing someone without being able to provide all of the evidence right away. I'm sorry it took so long. I knew about Chokopaii before Asami, and Asami's doc was just a small side task while working on Chokopaii's doc. I never expected Asami's doc to become viral, so that was extremely stressful as well, because I was trying to avoid being the AI doc person, but now my reputation is set. Now, I don't think anyone expected Asami's doc to go as viral as it did, but seeing that she tried to fake a time-lapse using a green screen, yeah, that went viral everywhere, even overseas, right? Even Japanese people were like, what the hell is this person doing? Which eventually, of course, prompted me to cover Teru's doc about Asami. And in that video, I was taken aback as to how well formatted Teru's document was. And of course, here they do it again. Incredible formatting, multiple sections, time-lapses built into the document itself in GIF format, and organized so neatly. It really is incredible. The document itself is around 111 pages long. Around 91 of them are dedicated to both Chokopaii and Maria with their alt accounts. The last 20 pages call out other examples of AI tracers, but for the sake of this not getting too confusing, we're just going to focus on Chokopaii and Maria. But that's only part 1 of the document. There's also a part 2, 31 pages long. But I'd say this is more of a bonus. It's really about AI tracer red flags, something very important if you seek to commission an artist. But seeing that it simply goes more into detail about things that are mentioned multiple times in the original document, we won't be going over this, but I'll be linking it in the description. If you ever plan to commission artists, definitely take a look at it first. Alright, let's get into this. The document starts off saying, Chokopaii, the Russian fraudster charging up to $700 for traced AI commissions under multiple identities. This document is about fraud, scamming, and the ongoing issue of artists charging hundreds of dollars for commissions that are traced from AI. Chokopaii runs multiple Twitter and Patreon accounts pretending to be different artists, owes clients hundreds of dollars from undelivered work, more specifically, clients who commissioned them under the assurance that she was a genuine artist and not tracing AI, harasses other artists, and has doxed people simply because they told others she was tracing AI. As she encourages her artist friends to trace AI as well, she's the center of a Russian-based AI tracing circle on Twitter. My intention with this document is to raise awareness of AI tracing fraud commissions and how time lapses are not definitive proof that someone isn't tracing. The doc will be archiving Chokopaii's manipulative behavior and her long history of pretending to be a victim that is falsely being accused of tracing. While you can browse the doc using the tab on the left, let me emphasize on these sections. And here we have 4 different sections. Number 1, ghosting clients and not delivering work, on top of the work already being fraudulent as it would be traced. Number 2, pretending to be different artists to farm traced AI commissions. Number 3, gaslighting, making fun of other artists, and plagiarizing art while acting oblivious, and 4, doxing and mocking a pregnant artist. So yeah, we're barely halfway through the first page, and as you can see, it's already quite heavy. The document would also specify, Chokopaii isn't the only scammer I will cover in this document. Notably, one of her closest friends also operates in a similar way. Her own section will be near the end of the document. Here are the multiple accounts that Chokopaii runs on Twitter. Chokopaii Rewards, Chokopaii, Meech111, Meechy20, Mashiro WWW, Levadiol, Kira Uip, UIIIJ9P, and Choco Shitpost. Before I begin, I will make it clear again that the purpose of this document is for clients to know what to look out for before commissioning new artist accounts, so they don't end up paying for traced AI. These accounts often have no AI in their bio, deceiving potential clients by implying they don't use AI. Despite that, I know some people might still argue, well, they like the final product, so why do they care after they found out it was traced from AI? When it comes to artistic endeavors and purchases of any types, not just art, the process advertised is just as important as the final product. Otherwise, it's fraud. If the commission was traced from an existing artwork that wasn't AI, it would still be plagiarism. So yeah, usually the logic behind hiring a very talented artist is the fact that they took years to perfect their craft and you're paying for that perfection. If that talented artist turns out to be someone that just uses AI, then I doubt anyone would say, yes, this justifies the price, right? And so the document continues. Chokopaii uses Telegram a lot, so a lot of screenshots will be from Telegram, machine translated from Russian to English. To validate the authenticity of these posts, instead of directly screenshotting the Telegram channel, I will use telemeter.io, a service that lets you see Telegram posts on your browser. That way, anyone can confirm none of the Telegram screenshots are edited and translate them on their own. For example, Chokopaii is already aware that I know about her. And so here we can see on the left an image of a post that Chokopaii has made in Russian, and on the right we can see the machine translated post, saying, "Can you believe that someone actually cares so much about me that some crazy woman on Twitter has been writing about me for a month now?" Smiley face. And I can confirm that telemeter.io is a legit source. When you click on it, it shows you the post in question with its analytics and the date it was posted as well. The document continues, Chokopaii already commented about the stock back in February 2026 before I even began working on it, and claims everything I will mention is fabricated. I have to clarify that my goal is not canceling Chokopaii or anyone mentioned later in the stock. In 2026, there is such a thing as being too big to fail, so my focus is entirely on art clients becoming more aware of AI tracers and knowing what red flags to look out for before commissioning art. Accounts like Chokopaii mislead people while charging clients hundreds of dollars for commissions when the work they deliver is traced. And here on the right, we can see an image of a post that Chokopaii had made on Telegram, saying the craziest thing is that she wants to drag my entire circle of friends into this mess. Here she's referring to Teru. God, let her just come down from the heavens to earth for starters. I'm sure there isn't even 1% of truth in this leak. Leak refers to the document. The main thing is to paint me as Hitler as much as possible? No. So to Chokopaii, this was nothing more than a harassment campaign. An attempt at painting her as the worst person imaginable when she's completely innocent, right? The document would continue, Chokopaii also posts videos like these to fool people into thinking that her art is not generated with AI. And so here we can see 3 GIFs of sped up time lapses that Chokopaii had posted on her socials. It doesn't really seem like she's drawing in any of them, just filling layers with colors. While Chokopaii doesn't really hide the fact that she is tracing to her private Russian fans, she's often hiding comments on Twitter and blocking users who mention AI. Chokopaii has 2 active Telegram accounts, her main art account and her shitpost account. The shitpost account is where she blatantly confirms using AI and makes fun of other artists with her friends, but it goes private whenever people on Twitter bring up her lies and past conflict with the Russian art community. So on the right we can see 2 images, the first one being her main Telegram group, the one open to the public. It's called Chokopaii and has the image of Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram. On the second image, we can see the private channel that has images of macaron with strawberries. And speaking of that private group, we'd see 2 different posts. The first one, in which Chokopaii says, "There will be no proof because I have 20 years of experience. I've been drawing since I was born with an AI in my arms. And of course, I have 50 IQ. Shut up." In the second post, she says, "I will trace AI until your grandchildren come of age." These 2 posts were made in 2025. The document would continue, there's more messages with a similar tone, bragging about using AI, if you want to look them up on her telemeter.io page. But I feel like the point is already very clear, so let me go back to her multiple accounts and how she pretends to be different artists to farm traced AI commissions and multiple Patreon pages. So here we can see multiple screenshots of those different accounts, and the document says, Chokopaii runs multiple accounts under different identities. Chokopaii, Michi, Mashiro, Levadiol, Kira, etc. I will try to make it as straightforward as possible what connects these accounts together, but I will elaborate more on each individual account later. First, let's look at Chokopai's signature featured through her old account images and put it next to Mashiro and Lavadiol's signatures. This font name is called Paragraph and does not come pre-installed on Windows. So here we can see 3 different images: Chokopai's old signature, Mashiro's signature, and Lavadiol's signature. They all use the same exact font. Teru would then say, but for all we know, this could be a coincidence or they could all be friends sharing the same font. Yet Michi, who is Chokopaii pretending to be her own sister, has said she has no connection to Mashiro or Chokopaii. Back in October 2025, I had QRT'd one of her posts claiming that she was Chokopaii and Mashiro. As I had not engaged with her on Twitter before, Michi confidently said that she had no connection with these people, but quickly backtracked when I replied with a tweet where she explicitly says Chokopaii is her sister. So here we can see Teru's call-out post back in October 2025. Michi would reply saying layers are not evidence and even streams are not evidence, so what is? Layers show that this is a human work, and I have shown a speed paint. I really put my heart and soul into it, but I have no connection with these people, referring to Chokopaii and Mashiro, and I would like to ask you to stop writing about it. Thank you for your time. Teru would then link a tweet from Michi's 18+ account saying, "This you?" in which we can see Michi saying, "It's okay, I am pleased to be compared to my sister, I look up to her," heart emoji, referring to Chokopaii, to which Michi would say, "What my sister did had nothing to do with me." So a complete backtrack on saying, I don't know who these people are. The document continues, on Michi's original tweet claiming she isn't tracing, more on that much later, she posted a Google Drive link that leads to a folder with her time lapses. These were uploaded by an account named Nympha Tian. This Google account also just so happens to have an AI-generated image as their profile picture. The document would then say there's an Instagram profile with the username Nympha_Tian that links to a DeviantArt account, and while the DeviantArt account is currently deactivated, there is an archive of it on the Wayback Machine. The link in the About section leads to a Pixiv account, ID 514-14202, with the name Lavadiol. On Lavadiol's Patreon, they disclose using AI. Teru is a private detective. What the hell is even happening? Damburu also has the usernames Kira Uip and Nympha Tian under the artist page for Lavadiol. Why? While Lavadiol is the display name for the Pixiv account, the legacy username is Nympha Tian. So already early on in the document, Teru is making the connection between multiple accounts, all belonging to Chokopaii. On Kira Uip's Twitter, you can see retweets of Chokopaii, Mashiro, and Michi posts. And the reason this account is under the Lavadiol artist name, as stated by Damburu mods, is the following. So when you change a username on Damburu, which is an image board site, you have to ask moderators and you have to give them a good reason. Here, the moderator's reasoning is public, saying, create alias from Kira Uip to Lavadiol. Reason? Because it's the same as her Patreon. So the person behind Kira Uip is the same person behind Lavadiol. The document continues, going back to the Wayback Machine capture of Nympha Tian's DeviantArt on the previous page, the Twitter button in the About Nympha Tian section leads to a Twitter account under the Nympha Tian handle. The link doesn't work as the Twitter account was renamed, but if you search for the previous username, you can see their current one, UIIJ9P, with the link to Lavadiol's Patreon on their bio. We can then see 2 images in the document showing that. Back in 2025, when Chokopaii stopped being active, Michi became more active instead. Michi's account was basically abandoned shortly after my quote retweet of her post. An account timeline will be provided later. Since I've yet to show any art examples of these accounts, here is a preview. All of these are traced from AI. So here we can see art from Chokopaii, Michi, and Mashiro. And Teru says, I'd like to point out that all of these accounts were following each other at one point. After all, Chokopaii doesn't seem to care if people know that she follows her multiple accounts, as she was quick to follow herself after she had made a new alt account for Mashiro, Mashiro_alt. And here we can see 2 images of that, Chokopaii following Mashiro and Mashiro following back. Chokopaii was taking commissions and running separate Patreon accounts for all of these at the same time, with the Michi account charging up to $700 for a commission, and Mashiro up to $253. We can also see Lavadiol taking commissions, but without specifying the price. So yeah, a lot of money. Of course there are artists out there that charge this much, sometimes more. But that's typically because they've worked on some big projects before, they're highly in demand, they have incredible talent, and they worked hard on it for a very, very long time. And just bear in mind, the person charging $700 here is Michi, and as you'll find out later in the video, this was someone pretending to be a 15-year-old. I wish I was joking. Anyway, the document continues. As I have to go through almost 2 years worth of information and way more than just tracing, as this person is also extremely toxic, the document will be going in chronological order starting from 2024, pointing out the red flags as I make my way from Chokopai's old accounts to her most recent ones. A summary of red flags will be at the end of the document, now part 2, but these accounts usually have the same pattern. So here we have 3 steps in this pattern of behavior, the first one being a new Twitter account with no previous online art history, not a new account by an existing artist, and in many instances immediately buying a blue checkmark, a Twitter verified account. If there's old art online under that username, there is an extreme, nearly impossible jump in art skill, especially anatomy, within less than a year. The skill jump is usually during or after 2023 when AI Gen became more advanced. Number 2, comments mentioning AI are quickly hidden, and when people point out obvious AI/tracing elements in an uploaded image, the image is deleted. And number 3, refusing to provide proof, deflecting, becoming aggressive when asked about their process, and in most cases, the proof such as time lapses just raises more questions instead of clearing up a potential misunderstanding. But how much of a sudden skill jump? Something like this in 5 months. So here we can see an image from Chokopaii on September 2024 with another image on the side from February 2025. The skill jump is not only massive here, but the art style is very different too. Everything from the anatomy to the lighting to the rendering, as well as just being able to draw boobs in a correct manner. I mean, this just seems like a 10-year skill jump, right? But Teru does specify, I have to make this disclaimer every time. Artists improve at different rates, and some people improve at impressive speeds within 1 to 2 years or even a couple of months thanks to a combination of discipline and effort. However, in the case of AR tracers, there are years of slow but steady improvement, yet only after 2024, they suddenly appear to master all areas of digital art at once. More often than not, it's just suddenly being able to draw very anatomically mastered curvy anime girls. Fast improvement does not always imply AI tracing. So Teru makes it a point to point this out because yes, there have been real legitimate artists accused of using AI on Twitter because AI has become this widespread. It's very unfortunate. The document would continue saying, Chokopaii joined Twitter in June 2024 under the username Chokopaii_art. Pre-Twitter records will be condensed. Yeah, buckle up because we're about to go through an entire history lesson on who Chokopaii is and her entire digital footprint history. So here we start off with the Telegram era. Before joining Twitter, Chokopaii was more active on Telegram. Telegram is a Russian messaging app similar to Signal or WhatsApp. It has tons of different communities and art channels. To keep things extremely short and summarized on the situation back then, Russian artists on Telegram noticed that Chokopaii's artworks and improvement looked suspicious, and accusations happened during 2024. As it happens often with tracers, the time-lapse tends to give it away. Here's one of the first time-lapses that Chokopaii had provided to refute that she was tracing back then. So on the right, we can see some of these accusations coming from different Telegram groups against Chokopaii, and we can also see a time-lapse. This time-lapse has the same issues that we saw with previous AI tracers on this channel. When you draw an illustration, especially with this level of complexity, it is very messy. There's a lot of sketching, there's a lot of scaling up and down, there's a lot of movement. And yet, in this time-lapse, everything is just done perfectly. Not a single mistake is made. It's as if Chokopaii was able to just visualize this perfectly in her head and print this out with no mistakes whatsoever. It's very fishy, especially if you're an experienced artist. Teru would say, what is wrong with this time-lapse? This is a Procreate time-lapse. Procreate has a feature where you can hide entire layers from showing in the final time-lapse, so tracing AI and faking evidence is very easy. But this isn't necessarily what gives it away. Rather, it is the lack of sketch and line work appearing out of thin air without a guide being placed without hesitation. While professionals and manga artists can draw without sketch guides, this is after years of experience and not something that is common. It's not a skill that a random new Twitter artist would be suddenly capable of. Under this, we'd see 2 images, one comparing Chokopaii's time-lapse to Asami's time-lapse. And we can see similarities in the sense that there are certain elements that are drawn before they're even drawn. Like in Chokopaii's case, the hair is drawn before the head is fully drawn, almost as if she already knows the exact proportions. And in Asami's case, the head is drawn with a missing chin. That's because she already knew exactly where to place the other elements blocking the chin. That's not how drawing works, unless you've been doing it for like decades or something. So these were the trace time lapses. This then leads us to the next subsection in the Telegram era section titled Plagiarizing Artists. Even with Chokopaii sharing her time lapses to dismiss the AI tracing accusations, people on Telegram also noticed that she was running other Russian artists' work through image to image and then tracing over them. To quickly summarize, image to image is a plagiarism method to generate new AI images from an input image. Chokopaii uses a specific Telegram bot to generate the AI images she traces, and said bot does let you use image to image very easily. So look, in a nutshell, the way image to image works is that you take art from someone else, right? Let's say someone drew a girl. What image to image will do is take that same drawing and stylize it into another art style. The document shows a few examples, even documentation from that Telegram bot that uses image-to-image as well. This is very useful for AI tracers because let's say someone goes viral with a certain drawing that they made. You could just steal that, run it through a different art style, post it and say, oh, I was inspired by this person, which will of course net you a lot of engagement as well. But the thing with Chokopaii was she didn't even bother to credit the original artist that came up with the idea that she was stealing from. She would steal a drawing from an artist by the name of Shirorina, run it through image to image, make up a new style, post it, but would only credit them in the replies 2 months later, by the time everyone had already moved on. So look, these Twitter trends, they happen often. For example, the Brazilian Hatsune Miku, that was a Twitter trend. When it goes viral, many artists try to do it in their own style, that way they can also get some engagement off of it, but they typically always credit the original creator. That's just how things go. But in this case, even after running it through image to image, according to Teru, Chokopaii only credited the original artist after 2 months, by the time the post had died. Even if we were to assume that she didn't use AI here, this is still scummy. The document would then say, Choco had built a very negative reputation on the Russian artist community, not only because of tracing AI, but also due to her extremely toxic attitude. There are tons of receipts online from her exchanges with other Telegram artists, but as post-comment chains can't be seen on telemeter.io, I can't verify their accuracy. So here we can see 2 screenshots of Chokopaii without a telemeter.io link, machine translated from Russian to English. On the first image, we can see Chokopaii referring to her haters, the people accusing her of using AI, saying, "You are all just scum. Let each of you be humiliated. It will only be a joy for me. Change the usage. I will always leave links to you. I won't give you life." So yeah, this is a rough translation. But the other screenshot here isn't as rough. It's something that Chokopaii will constantly do with people who call her out, calling them poor. In this case, she'd say, "At least learn to read what I wrote. I only use the color picker from AI and get my style inspiration from a certain neural network on Twitter. And that's it. I have a lot of orders. And what about you? You're a poor piece of crap from an anonymous forum who's afraid to even show her face." But according to this document, being labeled as broke is the least of your worries as a Chokopaii hater, because we would then be led to the next subsection of the Telegram era, which is called doxing another artist. At some point between the comments above and her infamous Telegram history, Chokopaii doxed another artist who originally called her out for tracing AI. Due to the sensitive nature of the situation, I will not really elaborate on how or when. I'll just say that there's a reason Telegram has a reputation when it comes to moderation. So here Teru is referring to Telegram's loose nature of moderation. This app has a reputation of sharing, let's say, clips of certain things that can't be shared elsewhere, as well as having groups where you can just straight up buy illegal drugs. So in a nutshell, people can get away with a lot with this app. The document would continue, according to one of the multiple people I talked to who watched everything unfold on Telegram, this artist was the first one, or one of the first, to point out that Chokopaii was tracing. Chokopaii does have a very vindictive personality. The following voice messages should give you an idea. So before we get to these messages, let's see what this person who reached out had to say about their friend being doxxed. They'd say, "Hi, this whole situation has been going on for years between them, and it's very convoluted. I can't even remember who started the doxing first, but currently, blank has suffered the most. She apologized, left Telegram, and deleted everything. But Chokopaii, along with her followers, is still hounding her. Chokopaii orchestrated doxing against blank, leading to her relatives' cards being blocked, fake bomb threats being made, attempts to get them fired from their jobs, signing them up for bogus job interviews, and more. In my opinion, blank has truly changed and acknowledged her past mistakes, including her role in the conflict with Chokopaii. I feel sorry for her because they still won't leave her alone. To me, the most important thing in a conflict is to bring it to an end, which she has done, yet Chokopaii simply refuses to calm down." So here are the 2 voice messages, converted from audio to text and then translated from Russian to English. Now this will be mentioned later in the document, but if you're a Russian speaker, you'll probably tell yourself this English translation does not do what she said justice. It is said in a way more aggressive manner. You can even say that it's unhinged. So just keep that in mind as we read these 2 messages. The first one, she'd say, "I'm just so fucking sick of it, seriously. Everywhere I go, like when I post something on an artist's public page, for example, I write something to the artist and then these fucking outsiders show up. Or just some random people who heard about it, but who knows what they actually heard. Like, oh, here comes this chick, what does she want? Go fuck yourselves. You're just so annoying. Because of these bitches, other people think I'm exactly what they say I am. I just don't have the energy for this anymore. Seriously, they're just spreading some kind of misinformation and it's really getting on my nerves. I'm seriously gonna post a thread like this once I get popular with their threats to me on the anonymous board. How they're calling me out as a Yiddish speaker." So here, this is a very rough translation. I'm pretty sure it's not Yiddish speaker. I guess it's more like AI user. It's gonna be such a mess. I'm gonna lay it all out in one post, tag every single one of these bitches so everyone knows whoever the fuck supports all this, fuck them. Why the fuck did they have the right to, like, fuck with my mental health, my fucking life, to incite people, well, basically to get people to harass me? Fuck them. They'll get it 100 times worse. And here's a second voice message where she says, "Fuck. My whole life's goal is to just strangle these little, I can't say that, but it's a slur that starts with F that's used towards gay people. So yeah, my whole life's goal is to just strangle these little blank one day, just smack and they're gone. They've just pissed me off so much, I just can't take it anymore. And in the next two images, we can see Chokopaii flexing, or the fact that she was going to start a rumor about the person who had first found out about her AI usage. And in the other image, saying that, oh hey, I have blank's data, smiley face. The document would say, regarding these two images, since it's a sensitive matter, I won't provide detailed information regarding the doxing event. After talking to multiple Telegram artists who wish to remain anonymous due to Chokopai's vindictive nature, I can confirm it did happen, but I will respect their anonymity wishes and the victim's privacy surrounding this event. Even though the victim apologized for calling out Chokopaii, left Telegram, and stopped posting online, Chokopaii still makes fun of them to this day. I will talk more about this later in the document. As mentioned before, Chokopaii uses a Russian Telegram bot to generate the AI images she traces, but there is a specific style that she uses when generating AI. The art style belongs to Coquette, a famous Taiwanese artist. So here we can see two examples. On the left, we can see Coquette's art, and on the right, we can see AI-generated art, well, using their same style. Teru would say, without any context or information, you couldn't claim that specific Chokopaii artwork was traced at all. You could assume she's inspired by Coquette's style, or maybe just heavily referenced from AI. So first, let's take a look at the red flag I mentioned before. I believe this is the most important piece of evidence in most tracing situations. And so here we get to the final subsection of the Telegram era, which is sudden skill jump, the first and most important red flag according to Teru in spotting AI tracing users. They'd say, when someone is tracing AI, there is an unprecedented skill jump within a year, particularly after 2023. Let's take a look at Chokopai's old art prior to 2023. As a reminder, her previous artist handle was Nymphia Tian. So here we can see art in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. This is a very distinct art style. It doesn't really change much. And throughout the years, there is very slight improvement. The document would say there are no 2023 artworks, and maybe that was the year Chokopaii decided to lock in and get on that artist grind towards improvement. And it is possible for an artist to improve a lot within a single year. I could not find any 2023 artworks online, but according to this timeline of change in art style meme she had posted on Telegram, she was stuck with hard art block, which might explain the lack of 2023 art activity. In parentheses, Teru would say it is possible that Chokopaii was running another AI/tracer account during that time. And so in that image and that meme that she had posted on her socials, we can see her art progress from 2015 all up to the year 2024. In 2023, we see nothing. We see just, hey, I was art blocked, but the jump in skill from 2022 to 2024 is astounding. This leads us to the next section titled Twitter Era. Back to Chokopaii on Twitter, English artists didn't know about Chokopai's reputation in the Russian artist community. At first, this looked like a normal artist account. Nothing really stood out at a glance. Without context, the first artwork she posted didn't look traced whatsoever. However, the odd improvement rate became extremely evident to some people, and new images uploaded started to show melted AI artifacts. We can see this in the images that are linked in the document, and yeah, some of the metal details of the dress look like they're melted. They don't really make much sense. We can even see people calling that out, and as soon as they did, they would get hidden and blocked. Taking advantage of the lack of translated information about her past history, she was trying to convince people this was her real skill while taking commissions. After all, Chokopaii had no AI on her bio for the longest time. And also back then, she was also charging money for commissions. For a bust, it was $50, half body $75, and full body $105. This was back in January 2025. On February 3rd, 2025, Chokopaii posted a time-lapse with a long message about being a victim of fake AI accusations. Once again, this was a Procreate time-lapse. Besides that, not knowing there's a hidden layer she's tracing from, nothing seems entirely wrong right away. She sketches the drawing before lining and even does a grayscale draft to plan out the highlights and shadows. So despite the fact that other people still pointed out the melting AI artifacts in previous drawings and the suspicious skill jump, most of Chokopai's Twitter followers continued to believe she wasn't using AI. After all, Chokopaii learned what makes time-lapses look very genuine after her multiple previous attempts at fooling more experienced Russian artists in the past. So according to Teru, this was someone who had learned how to fake time-lapses, how to make them convincing. And I mean, technically speaking, if you can do that, then no one can really say anything, even if they're experienced. But this is what leads us to the next section, a worrying and growing trend among AI tracers to make convincing time-lapses, and that's AR tracing pioneering scam tactics. Once Russian artists pointed out that Chokopai's time-lapses were not solid evidence that she was using Procreate and could hide the image she was tracing from when exporting the time-lapse video, Chokopaii decided to record a real video of herself drawing to finally refute all the tracing allegations. So here we can see 3 different GIFs of different sections of that time-lapse. and it's pretty much a camera recording Chokopaii drawing on her tablet. It's on a white canvas, right? She's drawing a drawing from scratch. It seems legit, and for just about anyone, that's what they would think. This is a legitimate time-lapse. But then Teru says, what is happening here? Chokopaii is evidently tracing AI, yet we're seeing her sketch in real time. This isn't a green chroma key trick, like the one that Asami used. This is called AR tracing. AR tracing isn't wearing a VR headset to draw. It's using an app to trace an image by elevating your phone on top of paper, or in Chokopai's case, her tablet, and lowering the image's opacity on your phone so that you can use it as the tracing guide. The phone's back camera is also recording the paper, while you are tracing the image by looking at your phone screen. So the same phone that you're using to record yourself drawing is also your tracing guide. When you're drawing, you're not looking at your tablet or your piece of paper, you're looking at the phone recording as you let it guide you to trace. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, like the amount of effort that goes into this, pioneering a new technique. The document continues and says, thanks to fraudsters like Chokopaii, time-lapses can't be trusted anymore, and not even real video recordings can be considered definitive proof these days. With a tripod and a tricky angle, you can just use AR to record a video of yourself drawing and fool any person who's not digital art savvy. I thought the renowned fraudster Asami Arts was going to try something like this, but she one-upped Chokopai's fraud technique by chroma keying the AI image underneath. In the end, people found out that the chroma key video to deceive people was edited by her husband. When people see time-lapses, and especially IRL videos, they quickly side with the tracer and dismiss all the other overwhelming evidence previously presented. I think most veteran artists would know if something odd is going on or not based on the drawing technique. That's why the videos that Chokopaii had recorded look odd to those familiar with art methodologies. It feels like she's tracing what seems to be an invisible image. It was the same with Asami's video. The sketching didn't appear to be natural when compared to her supposed art skill, but only people with digital art experience were able to tell. This was especially obvious when she sketched the hand with ball joints. It made no sense for someone of her supposed skill level, and a lot of pro artists pointed that out before people noticed the green color being missing from her color wheel. Chokopaii or Asami didn't invent these methods to trick people. There's been artists in the past, way before Gen AI existed, that have been caught tracing and lying with similar tactics. After all, Gen AI didn't create tracers or fraud, but it is an extremely easy avenue to exploit for tracing and scamming. I know some people might be thinking that by sharing these methods, I'm giving other tracers ideas and that they will use them to fake their own videos too, but I believe it's important to share exactly how these methods work and how to spot them, as I expect traced art accounts to become extremely common in the upcoming years. They are already fairly common and spreading in platforms like VGen. There are multiple ways to know if someone's using AR to trace, so it's not an infallible method. So yeah, more than ever, trusting an artist is really hard, because even if they show you themselves drawing on paper or on a tablet, recording themselves from another angle, they might still be legitimately fooling you. This is why what happened with Asami was so crazy. The fact that someone would go as far as chroma keying an entire color just to fake themselves being an artist, and here, like with the AR tracing, it's insane. But don't worry, it doesn't mean that you can't trust any artist on the planet. You just have to look out for the red flags mentioned here and in part 2 of the document. And speaking of red flags, this leads us to the next section titled Glorpy Miku Situation and Chokopai's toxic behavior behind the scenes. A month before the February time-lapse, where she AR traced, on January 27, 2025, Chokopaii posted a fan art of Glorpy Miku. Glorpy Miku is a fan-made Hatsune Miku design made by artist Diariku. As the tweet got popular with over 600,000 views and 30,000 likes, people once more started noticing there was something off with Chokopai's art. So here we can see at least 3 different hidden replies of people that were blocked, replying to Chokopai's post saying, yeah, this definitely looks like AI, why is it so similar to AI style, etc, etc. The initial person who came up with the Glorpy Miku design was made aware of these AI allegations that Chokopaii was pretty much just plagiarizing with AI. Here we can see an exchange that happened in the replies of that post between Chokopaii and Diariku. Unfortunately though, Diariku's replies have been deleted, but they were pretty much confronting Chokopaii, and what Choko had to say was, I have provided you with a stage of work and a clean line of this work. I'm really tired of trying to prove something to people forever. I understand your concerns, but please understand me too. I have been bullied for that some time on the social network where I started posting my work. I've already provided all the proofs, including speed paints, but nothing has changed. It comes to the point that they are looking for my address. I was already tired of living trying to prove something because it's useless, and I switched to Twitter in the hope that at least I'm safe here. To which Teru would say in the document, while Chokopaii was pretending to be a victim on Twitter, she and her friends were making fun of Riku and the situation on Telegram. In fact, the reply above wasn't written by Chokopaii, it was written and translated by her friend and fellow tracer, Maria, otherwise known as Nyanyaqwi. So here we can see an exchange between Maria and Chokopaii in their private Telegram channel. Teru points out that Maria is not only a part of this private Telegram group, but is also an admin. And here we see multiple screenshots showing us a conversation that's been of course translated between Maria and Chokopaii, in which they were talking about how to confront this. The fact that Diriku was calling her out. Maria here is saying, the main thing is to be careful. I think it's a good idea to play the ultimate victim so that when you provide proof, you have a group of sympathizers. A poor artist who was unfairly accused. Can you say something about the hate? That you've been subjected to hate for a long time and people leaked your address online. Because of this, you switched to Twitter in an attempt to escape this bullying? Choko would reply saying, like, should I write this or what? And this is when Maria says, don't worry, I can. Chokopaii would call her a goddess. Maria would say, wait a second. And then 16 minutes later, she would write a response for Chokopaii. So what's really important to note here is that the exact words that Maria had sent in that group chat would end up being what Chokopaii would post on Twitter in response to Diriku. And that was the second reply, in which she said, please understand me, I have been bullied for some time. I was hoping to come to Twitter in order to avoid this bullying. I'm tired of proving myself, etc., etc. Teru would then say, but Choko wasn't done playing the victim on Twitter. And on February 16th, she would continue with the same playbook, saying, to be honest, it's already hard for me to cope with the daily harassment. You copied my work, that's okay, but according to Instagram sources, you sold my work and also added your signature. I do not know why people spit on my soul and on my efforts. They sell my art, and in the end, I'm left to blame and they accuse me of AI, but this person who stole my work doesn't care at all. So here she's referencing someone who had stolen her Glorp Miku art, which Teru says is AI, and was selling it. She would then continue this reply chain with a similar sounding multi-paragraph tweet, saying that she's tired of all the negativity, asking people to stop accusing her of things she didn't do, and lamenting that people are not leaving her alone. So why was she pushing this victim narrative so hard? Look, what real artists are terrified of is to accuse someone of AI without proof, because then it ends up becoming a witch hunt. Even if an experienced artist knows that there's a 99.99% chance that someone's using AI, that tiny 0.1% still scares the hell out of them. And now when you have this person right here, Chokopaii, saying, oh my god, like people are doxing me, my life is ruined, you don't want to be someone who adds fuel to that fire. You're like, you know what, dude, I'm just going to step away, none of my business, I just want to draw art and be left in peace. That was her strategy, and with Diriku, it worked. This was an experienced artist who knew that something was up. But these paragraphs of playing the victim, they kind of turned them off from wanting to pursue this further. So this wasn't coincidental, this was all part of Chokopai's strategy. The document would then continue. Even after she deleted her tweets about Chokopaii, Chokopaii went ahead and decided to plagiarize a commission of Diriku's character drawn by Kuno MD, followed by a sarcastic telegram message about it. So as I said, Diriku didn't really want to bother with this. They deleted their tweets and moved on. So here Teru says that a little while later, Chokopaii would find an illustration of Diriku's character, the original character, drawn by Kuno MD. She would make a suspiciously similar art piece with the exact same pose and colors, and then post these two images together, right? So Kuno MD's original art and her art that looks similar in her telegram saying, Chokopaii leak, she can't generate the image herself, she just copies poses and ideas from other artworks. Please call her out on it. When you overlay the images, 2 pixels match up. So this of course was meant to be a joke, right? She was making fun of people who were accusing her of stealing this image and running it through image to image, using AI. But the similarity between the two is pretty clear. The document would then say, after that, Chokopaii kept hiding any comments pointing out she was tracing AI on Twitter and uploading more time lapses, ignoring the fact that they're Procreate time lapses. They did look just a bit convincing when compared to her previous ones. She would even add convincing details like an arrow to indicate the lighting direction for the shadows on the drawing itself. Unfortunately for Chokopaii, someone else had already seen the AI image she was tracing for this time-lapse, or potentially had run through image to image as she had done multiple times before. So Teru would have 2 drawings here. One drawn by Chokopaii in February 2025, and another one drawn by Peekaboo on May 2024. Teru would then overlay both drawings on top of each other and would find that the eyes are almost 1-to-1. A perfect match, making it unlikely to be a coincidence. Almost like Chokopaii had ran it through image to image. This would lead us to the next subsection, titled Traced AI Commissions as Chokopaii. Teru had to specify here, as Chokopaii, right? Because again, there's multiple alt accounts to look out for later. Chokopaii was successfully scamming people on Twitter while acting like a victim of AI harassment. Time-lapses in her media tab, no AI in her bio. You can't blame clients for not knowing any better. But Chokopaii wasn't just selling commissions on Twitter, she was also doing Your Character Here auctions and selling adoptables on the side through her Toy House account. So just so you know, YCH means Your Character Here. So it's a pre-established pose and even outfit, and all they do is just insert the character you want in there. And adoptables are, well, a design that you adopt. So let's say you want to become a VTuber, you're looking for a concept, you can very easily find someone with an adoptable, an already pre-made design, and buy that. Then you can hire someone else to model it, rig it, etc. So with that in mind, the fact that she had YCH and adoptable commissions on Toy House, we get to the next subsection, which is ghosting clients. A few months before the Glorpy Miku situation, on November 15th, 2024, Chokopaii posted a YCH auction on Toy House. On November 16th, 2024, the winner paid $100 for the auction, and Chokopaii mentioned that it would take 2 to 3 months to finish. However, there was no further communication after that, so after 3 months of no responses, the client messaged Chokopaii on Twitter. Chokopai's excuse was that she had lost her Toy House account. So here we can see multiple images of that client messaging Chokopaii on Twitter, initially getting the response, oops, sorry, lost access to Toy House on February 2025, right? A few months after they had won. We can see this person trying to pursue Chokopaii up until July 26, 2025 in the DMs, and eventually in October 2025, they can be found in the replies to Chokopai's post saying, this person ghosted me on a commission and now I'm out like 100 plus USD with zero communication. Chokopaii never answered to the client, and the client has yet to receive a refund. The case of another client she had ghosted after taking a $300 commission will be mentioned later, as it is tied to Chokopai's sister, Michi. The sister here is in quotations, because it's alleged that Michi was just Chokopaii role-playing as her sister. Teru would then add, I was also told that Chokopaii also ghosted Telegram clients during 2024 and never refunded them. This is what leads us to the next section titled, quote-unquote, retirement from art. On July 27, 2025, Chokopaii posted the following statement on her Telegram, saying, I don't have anything to post, and I don't feel like drawing anymore, so I want to retire as an artist. Thanks to everyone. For those who are interested, I plan to make my debut in 2026 as a VTuber, and then would thank her community again. This is what brings us to the next section, alt accounts timeline. After that Telegram statement, Chokopaii stopped posting on her Twitter and Telegram accounts. Her last upload on Twitter was on June 28, 2025. During this time, she moved on to her other accounts, Michi, Mashiro, Lavarial, and Kira Uep. If you need a refresher on how those accounts are all tied together, go back here. Again, so well formatted. I mean, if we click on this, this brings you back to Chokopai's multiple accounts with the different signatures. I could talk for hours about why I love this document so much, but anyway, back to where we were. So here we can see a massive timeline, right? Like as if you were an investigator trying to pursue a mass murderer or something, spanning like almost a page and a half, going as far back as November 2021, in which the account Lavarial was created on Twitter, and how from 2024 to 2026, multiple accounts would be created and would have varying degrees of activity. You can pause the video if you want to take a look at it for yourself. I mean, it really is very nicely made, but this document will go through every single one of these accounts individually in the upcoming sections anyway. Let's begin looking at each account individually, starting with Lavarial. On Lavarial's Patreon, Chokopaii does disclaim that the images are AI. I don't have a lot of screenshots of her activity or commissions on Twitter with this account, as it was suddenly suspended sometime during September 2025. As of March 2026, she still actively updates the Lavarial Patreon and Pixiv accounts. Lavarial's original uploads had a different AI style than the one she is currently generating. So here we can see the original illustrations that were used on Lavarial's Patreon initially. There are 4 different examples. Of course, these are anime girls in different poses, maybe wearing bikinis, maybe wearing revealing clothing. And then we'd see an entirely different art style that's being posted today. Teru would say the current images generated for Patreon/Pixiv are using the style of Japanese artist Bunshi. This is when they'd explain what a Laura is, which is a low-rank adaptation. This is something that we've also seen in my previous AI Tracer videos. It's essentially just you taking an artist's entire illustration portfolio, running it through AI, and having AI remake images using that same exact art style. Teru on the left shows an example of a Bunshi original drawing, and on the right we can see an AI-generated one. You can barely tell the difference. You'd think that it was Bunshi that drew this. It's uncanny. Teru would then say, although Pixiv requires users to tag AI-generated content, none of Lavarial's content is properly tagged. And uploaded content is also marked as original despite them not being original characters. Lavarial's Patreon avatar and image used for her collections is art from Twitter user Wanla8, most definitely being used without permission. Chokopaii also uses one of her alts, UIIJ9P, to promote Lavarial's Patreon. So here we can see that alt account, UIIJ9P, making a post with a drawing of that same stolen art style from Bunshi, saying extras elsewhere, with text on the image saying Patreon Lavarial. So these accounts are connected. What's even more interesting too is that Lavarial on Patreon follows Michi, Mashiro, and Kira Uep. Teru says Choco loves following herself everywhere. And speaking of following herself with her alts, here's the next one, Kira Uep. Kira was also generating AI content with Bunshi style, but Chokopaii wiped their media tab at one point during 2025. As of 2026, the Pixiv of Kira Uep has been abandoned. The last upload was on July 30th, 2025. So again, we can see that same art style being used here before they were wiped out, very similar to the art style that was being posted by UIIJ9P as well as Lavarial. And this is what brings us to a pretty unhinged section. Michi, the sister. This is Michi, an artist who first introduced herself on Telegram during April 1st, 2025. Let's begin by addressing Michi's statement that she's 15 years old. Teru says in parentheses she's not, don't worry. As the Telegram post that had this information was edited on June 16th, 2025 to remove it, this is what it used to look like. And it pretty much said, I am 15 years old, my birthday's on March 8th, I use an iPad Air 2022. And to confirm that this was edited, Teru would also link the telemeter.io post, which shows the original. She does indeed say that she is 15 years old. This is disturbing for so many reasons, you're about to find out why. Actually, you can see it right here. Michi had two different accounts. Mich111, where she posted SFW drawings, and Michi20, where she posted 18 plus NSFW drawings. This was someone role-playing as being 15. But Teru's going to mention that later in the document, of course. Anyway, Michi did not immediately mention being Chokopai's sister, but after she uploaded a couple artworks, Russian artists started noticing the similarities between her and Chokopai's art amongst other things. So only after a few days after her introduction post, she made the following statement. So Michi would say, I saw these stupid accusations. If anyone didn't know, Chokopaii is my older sister. Maybe that's why our styles might be a little similar. Because I've been inspired by her since I was a kid. So people, no negativity. I love everyone. There'll be a full post tonight. Heart emoji. This will be done on April 9th, 2025. Barely 8 days after introducing herself for the first time. On the next page, we'd see Michi's current Telegram avatar and previous Twitter avatars are AI generated. We would see these images more clearly. And of course, Teru points out, 15-year-old with NSFW Patreon. Even though she edited her Telegram post to remove her age, she would still post on Twitter that she was 15 years old. Despite supposedly being underage, Michi has an NSFW Patreon. Patreon requires face and ID verification for NSFW accounts. I assume people on Twitter noticed this and reported it to Patreon because Michi's original Patreon account got suspended at one point last year and she had to make a new one. So here we can see that even on Michi's account, she was charging $7.5 a month for exclusive artworks, speed paints, PSD files, etc., continuing the same formula she's been using since the beginning. Teru would then say, and while Michi would keep mentioning that Chokopaii was her older sister, Chokopaii never really made any comments suggesting that Michi was her little sister. So here we can see two different replies from Michi saying, it's okay, I'm pleased to be compared to my sister, I look up to her, don't be ridiculous, this is my older sister. But then we can see Michi commenting on a post by Chokopaii saying cute, and then Chokopaii would just say, thank you. You know, no mention of her being her little sister, no like, oh my god, thanks sis, none of that, just TY. Anyway, the document would continue. Michi's username seemed kind of familiar to me, until I realized there was another artist with a similar name on Twitter, Miyuchik. At first, we didn't know if this was yet another Chokopaii alt, as the style was not similar, but the artist was also Russian. I decided to reach out to the artist to see if this was a coincidence. So on September 2025, Teru would reach out, and the artist would say, hello, no, I've known about her for a long time, she just copied my username, lol, sad face. I don't know what I can do with this. So as you can see, Teru has had their eye on Chokopaii for a long time, since September 2025. The document would then say, with that knowledge in mind, you can take a look back at their Twitter bios and notice the similarities. And here we can see some interesting patterns. Miyuchik would have 2 star emojis next to their name, Michi would do the same exact thing, and even the way that Miyuchik had like their bio structured, the way they would say Illustrator, how they'd have comms as their Twitter location pointing towards their card website. Michi would do the exact same thing. It was a Control-C, Control-V situation. Teru would then say other Russian artists on Telegram once more noticed the similarities. This is how one of them recalls it. As far as I know, she's also around blank years old. When people started actively talking about AI use among artists, she came under fire too because of blank. Basically, when Chokopaii and some other artists ended up on a list of suspected Russian AI users, Chokopaii started trying to befriend some of them, bonding over a shared problem, so to speak. I'm 100% sure that because of the situation, Chokopaii was heavily inspired by Miyuchik's story, her age, her username, and everything else. And speaking of this inspiration, right, this will lead us to the next subsection titled Plagiarizing Artists 2. On April 2nd, 2025, Michi posted a Narissa fanart on Twitter. Narissa, of course, is a very well-known VTuber under Hololive. For this section, remember that as I had mentioned earlier, you can plagiarize any image online with image to image. People noticed that this image resembled another Narissa artwork uploaded by another artist back in March 2025, so a month earlier. On April 17th, 2025, Michi made the following statement on her Telegram channel. So what would happen was, the tag AI would be added to that post she made of that fan art. And so then of course she would complain in her Telegram channel saying, sorry for the rant, but I'm really upset right now. I buy ads from people, but they end early because people come and complain that I'm supposedly cheating with AI, even though there's no proof. Please leave me alone. So it would again be structured very similarly to the post that Chokopaii used to make whenever she got in trouble for AI. Under this, we can see an image of the original drawn by the artist N. Hayes. They look very similar, just inverted, right? Instead of her looking to the left, she's looking to the right. And Teru would, of course, put them on top of each other, right? In GIF format, you could see them kind of overlaid, and it looks suspiciously similar, right? Even the eyes kind of overlap. Teru would say, while the canvas dimensions are different, the composition looked very similar to an artwork that N. Hayes had uploaded a month before. Because Michi/Chokopaii has a history of plagiarizing works with image to image, I've yet to show every single example to keep the document as streamlined as possible. I don't believe this was a coincidence. And to show how Chokopaii usually gaslights people, pretends to be a victim, and twists the truth, here's her October 2025 post about the situation. So here we can see a post made by Michi, saying, in addition, there were many accusations of plagiarism of the Narissa drawing, the same pose and clothing. Yes, I have acknowledged this, and I was wrong and feel extremely ashamed about it. I was truly inspired by this art and wanted to draw something similar, and I deeply regret this action. I have already apologized to the artist in person, and I even have a screenshot of the apology. Please stop constantly bringing up the situation, as I have already acknowledged and learned from my mistake. It won't happen again. So in this post, we can see a screenshot of her messaging N. Hayes, right? The artist that was copied. In it, we don't see a response from N. Hayes, and the other image would show N. Hayes has blocked you. Teru would say, as far as I know, she never acknowledged it on Twitter before, and the screenshots she attached were meant to paint herself as a victim again. The first screenshot is a DM that never got answered, followed by a screenshot of N. Hayes blocking her, implying that N. Hayes had ignored her after she reached out. Except that Michi/Chokopaii omitted the fact that N. Hayes had contacted her first, but she deleted N. Hayes' message before taking the screenshot. So here we can see a comparison of Michi's screenshot with N. Hayes' actual DMs, in which we can see N. Hayes saying, "Hello, it has come to my attention that one of your Narissa drawings is very anatomically similar to one of mine from some times ago, and I thought I'd reach out for clarification. Were you referencing my art?" To which we can see Michi saying, "I'm sorry I didn't answer you, but I don't want to cause a scandal. My body is too weak for that. Please forgive me again, I was wrong. I was inspired by your work, but I drew it myself and I don't use artificial intelligence. Please delete the posts with me. I can't see the negativity from different people in my direction." So this is definitely interesting, right? I might even say it's crazy, trying to paint N. Hayes as someone who's unreasonable when they had reached out first. Very interesting, and we're not even halfway through the document. And so we'd find ourselves in the next subsection titled AI Laura Chandayu 1. While Michi's traced work fluctuates in anatomy/style slightly, the only semblance of consistency is in the eyes, and even then they aren't always similar. Her works resemble artist Chandayu's style the most. So here we can see that artist's original style on the left, with Michi's drawings on the right. Again, same with the previous examples of trying to emulate other artists' styles. If you told me that all four of these images were drawn by Chandayu, I would very easily believe you. They're just that similar. On the bottom left, we'd see someone replying to one of the posts of Michi copying Chandayu's style, saying, "I really love your art style. It reminds me of Chandayu's style a bit. Cool art." To which Michi would say, "Yes, I'm inspired by her style. Thank you." Teru would then say, while pointing with the left arrow towards the image of those tweets, "There is a chance that it's just another generic AI output being traced and Chandayu's signature style choices are just added on top of the traced image." But it's confirmed, as Michi mentioned being inspired by Chandayu in the past. Clearly, there is nothing wrong with being inspired by another artist, unless that inspiration means plagiarizing their work. This is when we would reach the next subsection, Trace Timelapses 4, Michi Edition. During early 2025, some people noticed typical AI tracer red flags on Michi's account. And so again, here we'd be revisiting some red flags we already saw before, like a new account with no past online art records but skilled level art, and AI tracing elements like looping hair, wonky hands, poor line work, and fluctuating anatomy proportions between images, so pretty much inconsistency with weirdness. Just like her previous persona, the pattern that followed was the same. On April 18, 2025, weeks after the N. Hayes incident, Michi posted a time-lapse to prove that she was not tracing. The first thing to point out is always the art program. In this case, this is a 30-second clip of Clip Studio Paint time-lapse. Unlike Procreate, recording a trace time-lapse isn't as straightforward with CSP because it doesn't have hidden layers. However, there is a way to hide a layer from showing in the time-lapse. You are limited to binary line work, but it's still possible. Personally, I don't think Chokopaii/Michi is using that method here. There is yet another method that would let you forge a trace time-lapse with CSP that doesn't even involve the program itself, but besides those two methods, I'm more likely to believe that she is using AR to trace here and then color picking from another canvas open within CSP. From my personal analysis, it is not the sketching that's suspicious in this case, but rather the way some hair streaks have no coherence when they are lined. and the precision in the line work itself, the anatomy accuracy without edits from an artist who has no past art history. Combine that with all the previous red flag elements in other artworks, like looping hair, wonky hand, poor line work compared to anatomy, etc., and this time-lapse doesn't really prove anything. However, if this same time-lapse had been uploaded by someone without AI tracing red flags in their other art, or someone with a long history of online art uploads and consistency, then it would be less likely to suspect that it's traced. So see, this is dangerous, right? Like, imagine if someone had been drawing legit with a high skill level for like 5 years, 10 years, before AI had even come out, and now uses AI, you would have no way of proving it whatsoever. We're lucky here that Michi or Chokopaii is a brand new account. That's an easy red flag, but what if it was someone who's been drawing for like a decade? That's where it gets very, very tricky. Teru would then say, since there was now a time-lapse as a shield for any future accusation, Michi would go on and continue telling people that she wasn't using AI or tracing. Only 6 months after she had uploaded her first artwork, Michi would make a new account as she had been shadow banned for uploading suggestive artworks. While it's frustrating to get shadow banned and not indicative of anything in itself, tracers usually worry a little too much about being shadow banned when their art account is brand new. Here we can see a tweet by Michi on her NSFW account saying, "Help me please, I'm in complete despair. All my works fall under a shadow ban." And interestingly enough, we see a reply by Mei-chan saying, "Same, this is just awful." This is someone that we'll see later on in this document. Teru would then continue, "What permanently disabled probably means here is that her account was marked as 18+, so it's not visible to people when they are logged out. For AI scammers, getting a constant stream of views to get commissions is more important than their follower count, so they rarely get attached to their accounts and just make new ones if they get shadow banned. Plus, the Twitter algorithm currently favors new or smaller accounts when it comes to reach/views. So on August 21st, 2025, Michi would move from her NSFW account to Meech111 while keeping her old account to RT the images she would upload on her new account." And so, with this new account made, it would bring us to the next major section titled Charging $700 for Traced Commissions. As of early April 2026, sometime during April 1st to 10th, Michi's card with her commission information was deleted. Not a problem, I figured that was going to happen eventually, so here is the archived version instead. Teru coming prepared no matter what, dude. It's crazy. Back in September 2025, she was charging $160 for a half body and $200 for a full body. But sometime between September 2025 and October 2025, her prices were raised from $160 to $500 for a half-body artwork and from $200 to $700 for a full-body artwork. What happened during a single month that would make Michi raise her prices by over 200%? My only guess is that during October, her post started getting so many likes and views that it emboldened her to raise her prices. Why trace 4 artworks for $200 when you can trace one for $700? I'm not sure if anyone paid $700 as she never mentions the client's usernames when she posts commissions. These commissions posted afterwards could have been paid for before the prices were increased. This is what would make Teru point out another red flag to look out for with tracers. Tracers will usually fluctuate commission prices, basically doing dynamic pricing based on how much attention their most recent posts are getting. We can almost make a distinction here. Michi increased the prices in October 2025, and it just so happens that during that month, she would get a post that would reach over 1 million views and 60,000 likes. So, more views equals higher price. Just so you're aware, typically the most popular artists on the platform don't really do this. They might increase commission prices based on demand for commissions specifically, but not really based on how their art is performing on Twitter. So this definitely isn't the norm. And so the document continues. As we were around the September 2025 mark and things became interconnected during October 2025, I will stop talking about Michi for a second and focus on Mashiro before returning to Michi. So yes, here's yet another alt account made by Chokopaii by the name of Mashiro. Mashiro joined Twitter during April 2025, but their first upload was in June 2025. Looking back at the timeline, this is around the time Chokopaii stopped uploading art on Twitter and made her retirement post. Michi was also very active during April 2025, as well as Kira, Uip, and Levadiol accounts. Generating and tracing AI is quick and easy, so I can see how it wouldn't be that time consuming for her to run multiple accounts. Mashiro's first posts were all traced before they moved to posting fully generated AI, as this account was the catalyst for this document. This is when Teru would mention red flags to look out for again. This time showing 5, the first one being a brand new account on Twitter. 2, Googling Mashiro or the username itself, so Mashiro_www does not lead to any existing artist profiles or old art. 3, this is someone who knows art very, very well, but has no history online, right? As if they just spawned. 4, they have advanced anatomy knowledge, but their line work is sloppy and rendering skills are very basic. And then 5, the art posted only consists of characters wearing skimpy clothes, bunny outfits, swimsuits, etc. Characters are never drawn in their official outfits. And honestly, if I had to add a sixth red flag to look out for myself, I'd say every single drawing is fan art of something, whether it's a VTuber, an anime character, a game character, trying their best to take advantage of a very passionate fandom. Teru would then say after August 2025, Mashiro would stop uploading traced AI and instead start uploading full gen AI with minor edits on top. This was evident as the newer artworks had a completely more advanced rendering compared to Mashiro's earlier uploads, and more importantly showed multiple melting AI elements when zoomed in. Also during this period, Mashiro would start taking commissions. Full body $253, knee up $127, head $90, skeb-like sketch $40. As they had begun uploading more AI instead of just traced images, it became more obvious that this was a fraud account. People noticed very quickly. But as it happens every time, Mashiro actively hid any comments mentioning AI, blocked people, and just continued to upload, never acknowledging any of the allegations. And here we can see 6 different examples, I'm sure there's more, of replies mentioning AI, getting hidden, and blocked. Because when you hide replies on Twitter, you automatically block the user too, unless you go out of your way to not do so. Let's take a look at the 2 images that got these AI comments that were hidden and blocked. So for the first image, Teru says this is the kind of image where there's absolutely no doubt that it's AI generated. And here they would provide zoomed in examples of the original drawing. I mean, my God, look at this formatting for a second. We have to appreciate this like you appreciate a pretty view off the balcony or something. Wow. Merging hair, strings, missing parts, crooked fingers, melted AI artifacts. Blocking and hiding replies is pretty effective, especially when no one else is talking about it. They would continue to farm commissions under Mashiro's persona while taking commissions on her Michi account at the same time. Chokopaii had learned that it's better just shut up and ignore people instead of trying to prove anything, or so it seemed. On September 26, 2025, artist Yoclash noticed that Mashiro was taking commissions and would point out that their work was AI. Yoclash's tweet below is a quote retweet of Mashiro's tweet on the left. This is the image that we just saw that had zoomed in elements where Teru was saying it's very obvious that it's AI. But just 3 days before that post, another artist on Twitter had tried to alert people about what was happening as well. While this post alerted some people, it didn't gather enough traction to get a response from Mashiro. It was only after Yoclash's tweet, and I assume under the pressure, that Mashiro finally replied to people, but the red flags just piled up. You see, tracers tend to come up with ridiculous excuses. So here we see even more red flags. The first one being charging 20% of the commission price if you wanted a time-lapse recorded for the commission. So imagine an artist is charging $100 for a commission, you ask to see a time-lapse to make sure that it's real, and they tell you, oh, actually, if you want a time-lapse, instead of paying $100, you have to pay $120. That's crazy. The second red flag is claiming that publishing time-lapses would be unfair for people who pay for their Patreon, because the Patreon has time-lapses. That's a really weird excuse, obviously, it doesn't make any sense. And the third red flag is, when pressure builds up, they finally decide to share a time-lapse, but within a long time frame. So see, after Mashiro got called out, someone would say, can you upload a video so that we can see the process and know that we're not being scammed by Gen AI? And Mashiro would say, I can, I'll do it within a week. You typically don't need a week if you're legit, right? It's just as simple as turning on the camera and drawing anything just to show how your workflow goes and that you're not tracing. So when the accusations piled up, Mashiro said that they would record a time-lapse and post it only if the people saying their work was AI ended up apologizing, specifically mentioning Yoclash. Knowing Chokopai's past on Telegram and seeing how she had forced people to apologize to her while making fun of them in private, this isn't surprising in the slightest. This was the exact moment when I found out about Mashiro, which led me to Michi, Chokopaii, and her circle of Russian tracers. But before getting into that, let's continue talking about Mashiro. As I've already elaborated on the red flags at the start of the section, to me there was no doubt this was a scammer. Even if they had never uploaded Gen AI full of melting elements and nonsensical hair and just continued tracing instead, the other red flags were very evident. And while I could 100% confirm they were tracing, the time-lapse is usually what wraps it up. On September 17, 2025, one day after seeing Yoclash's post, I made a post about Mashiro because I had noticed I had mutuals following their account. And just as expected, within an hour, Mashiro untagged themselves from my post and I was blocked. On September 20th, 2025, 3 days later, Mashiro would finally post the highly requested time-lapse of their work, but with comments turned off. This is a Procreate time-lapse, and you can tell by the fading effect at the start of the recording, I have to repeat this every time. Procreate has a function that lets you hide layers from the time-lapse recording, making it very easy to trace. And this is Chokopaii we're still talking about, who after trial and error found out what makes time-lapses look quote-unquote genuine. Here, there are 2 sketch drafts before she draws the actual image. Time-lapses tend to fool non-artists easily. If someone who has never seen time-lapses, art live streams, or art workflows sees the time-lapse on the right, nothing would really stand out as unusual, even when the hair looks like this in the final image. So on the right, we can see the time-lapse. In it, Mashiro would initially draw a sketch, completely scrap it, and then draw another one with a completely different pose. In the final image, Teru would point out that the hair is looping. It just looks weird, something that AI would do. The document continues, and Mashiro's excuse as to why their other art has strange elements when zoomed in, they use an upscaling site for their art, and they never noticed before because the art looked quote-unquote visually pleasing. While it's true that AI upscaling will generate artifacts, this tends to happen extensively when the image being upscaled is small or blurry. I know that this is just a ridiculous lie, but for the sake of evidence, let's find out what upscaling site Mashiro is using that apparently generates these strange artifacts. And so here we can see DMs between Mashiro and someone else, where that person asked them, hey, what upscaling site do you use? And Mashiro sent airbrush.com. On the right, we can see a tweet made by Mashiro explaining that, hey, the reason why my artworks look strange when zoomed in is because of 16K image upscaling. This brings us to the next subsection titled AI upscaling. Mashiro is claiming that the melted elements in their artwork are because they upscale their art. They say they use airbrush.com's image enhancer to upscale it, so in theory, we could recreate the image on the screenshot, right? So here we see 3 different comparisons. The first one being the traced image, the second one that was upscaled by Mashiro with very weird artifacts, and the third one is real upscaled by Teru. And we can see that traced and real upscaled look similar. There's no weird artifacts, so to speak, at least not ones that are as crazy as the upscaled one in the middle that was used by Mashiro. I mean, even the pupil itself, right? Even the pupil looks weird in the one that Mashiro was using. It doesn't even look like a proper circle. Mashiro is not the only one who has tried to lie about upscaling technology adding artifacts to their art. I recall another instance where someone painted over an AI image and claimed it was due to AI upscaling tools, and more recently, another generic AI gen account lying about their uploads being drawn by them and that the artifacts were, once more, a product of AI upscaling. After posting the time-lapse and having blocked everyone who mentioned AI, Mashiro would continue to post on their account as if nothing had happened and promoting their Patreon. Comments were turned off for a while on their newer uploads, so no one would be able to bring up AI or tracing. So here we can see 2 different examples of AI tracers saying, oh yeah, the artifacts are there because of AI upscaling. And in the middle of the page, we can see the many artworks that Mashiro would continue to upload even after their time-lapse. This would lead us to the next subsection titled AI Tracer Commissions on Twitter. Chokopaii was tracing commissions as Mashiro, and Michi had posted finished commissions, but did Mashiro ever get to scam someone? Unfortunately, the answer seems to be yes, but none of the commissions were ever uploaded publicly. I was able to acquire Mashiro's commission files below thanks to a contributor. So here we can see 4 different illustrations that were of course traced according to Teru, and they all seem to be half body. Mashiro was charging $320 for half bodies. So this is at least $1,200 alone based on commission files that Teru was able to acquire. That's a lot of money. The document would then continue, thus, the main reason for this document is not to cancel Chokopaii. Instead, I want to raise awareness about fraudsters like these, charging hundreds of dollars for traced slop. This is very common on Twitter at the moment. I will elaborate more at the end of the document, but to give you an idea, here are a few Russian accounts, Chokopaii's friends, running the same traced commission scam. So here we can see 3 different examples, all charging over $100 for at least a half body, doing the same thing according to Teru. A lot of these accounts have successfully scammed clients for the past year, and if they ever have people pointing out their work is traced from AI, it's easier to ignore and block them than to engage. Even if they delete their accounts, they can just make a new account later under a new identity and pretend to be a different artist. On the right, we can see 2 screenshots, for example. The first one being an artist, Misui, who Teru had already called out in the past and made a small document about, charging $200 for sketches, who then made a new account when they were called out by the name of Accusations, also charging $300 for a sketch. Teru would say, my personal suggestion is that from now on, clients avoid commissioning new artist accounts who can't provide a track record of their art online before 2024. Now yes, this is unfair for new artists, of course, but unfortunately these days you really have to be careful. When we're talking about commissions that cost hundreds of dollars, right, which is a lot of money for many people, right, this might be multiple months of salaries, you can never be too careful. And this would lead us to the next section, Michi Part 2, back to the whole 15-year-old sister. While all of that was happening over in Mashiro's account during September 2025, Michi did not upload any new artwork. It was also during September that Lavariel's account was suspended. Some people brought up Michi when I posted about Mashiro. Here's someone in September 2025 saying, I'm not sure, but they followed Mich111 and their styles are very similar, and this is another new account. Teru would say, to be honest, I had personally seen the account before, and I had seen Chokopaii and Nyanyaqwi's accounts back in 2024 too. But back then, I thought it was clear that the images were traced and I figured it would be obvious for everyone else, so I just blocked them and moved on. I figured there was nothing I could do, especially because trying to argue with liars is extremely exhausting. Now I understand that these tracers thrive off people's indifference and lack of action. As long as no one says anything, they can quietly continue scamming. Besides slopperators without a single artistic bone in their body, there are now artists like Chokopaii, fully capable of drawing on their own, exploiting AI by making multiple accounts pretending to be different artists to make separate Patreon accounts. During September 2025, a few days after I had posted about Mashiro on my account, I received a DM from an acquaintance who helped with the Misui document. So as I mentioned before, this was another artist that Teru had called out and made a document about, an AI tracer. I decided to look into it. So the person that DM'd them would say, the account Mashiro that you called out is related to Michi, Mei-chan, Meech111, and Nyanyaqwi. I'm pretty sure they are all AI accounts that all followed and retweeted each other from early on and used the same techniques. Some are the same people, some are different. Someone was DMing me about them. Teru would say, I decided to take a look into it. While at first it appeared to be someone just running multiple AI accounts, I ended up finding about Chokopai's records of bullying, harassment, doxing, and gaslighting. The receipts I was shown, some not published in this document, were mentally taxing and discouraged me a lot from writing about this issue. Someone else that had seen my Mashiro post on Twitter spread the word around Russian Telegram, and I started receiving emails from multiple artists who were too afraid to talk about Chokopaii publicly because she had their personal information and had threatened to dox them if they spoke against her. These emails ended up confirming the findings that me and my team had gathered. Mashiro was Michi, Michi was Chokopaii, and it was very easy to deduce what other accounts were linked to her as they were all following each other on Twitter and had reposted each other multiple times on Telegram. We had all the information in screenshots, and it was just a matter of putting together a document. I ended up having to take a break due to unrelated health issues at the time. We were also waiting on some emails from other parties that had more information, and while promising at first, eventually we stopped receiving replies. These artists were afraid that they could be traced back by Chokopaii or her friends. In the end though, the info they were going to provide was related to controversial exchanges about Chokopai's past, lying and bullying, and not necessarily AI tracing. But then, on October 29th, 2025, Michi posted this on Twitter. They'd say, recently, many people on Twitter have started to hate on me and accuse me of using AI without any evidence, and it's really hurtful. So again, it would be the same playbook, right? It's hurtful, it hurts me, I work really hard on this. I can drop a PSD file and a video with layers on any of my art because I really have nothing to hide. In addition, I'm attaching a link to a Google Drive with at least a few speed paints of my work from Clip Studio app. I mean, overall, it was really the same excuses that were used on her other accounts, right? But this would be when they'd also mention that whole DM that they made to Enhaze, saying that they had messaged them and they didn't reply and then blocked them, right? This is when that happened in October 2025. Teru would say, I usually don't engage with tracers directly. Apologists will often side with the tracer and NPC accounts will deflect by claiming that you are witch hunting regardless of how much evidence you present. But combined with my health situation at the time, a mix of stress and multiple people emailing me about Chokopaii and asking for help, this post felt like the last straw that broke the camel's back, and I felt the uncontrollable urge to reply to Michi. This is when the following exchange happened, and so this would be the tweet that was made in October 2025, where Teru would quote tweet them, saying, showing layers means nothing when you are tracing AI. Posting a time-lapse is better proof. Except you had tried that with your previous account, Chokopaii Art, and people didn't buy it back then either. In the document, Teru would say, you don't want to tip off tracers because they will immediately start deleting evidence. But at this point, we had all the screenshots we needed. It was only a matter of organizing them in a doc and archived all the sites, so Chokopaii deleting stuff wasn't an issue at all. And so this would lead us to the next subsection titled Real-Time Drawing with Magma. Michi had no idea about all the information we had, so I followed along and invited her to draw together on a Magma board. Magma is a website where you can draw in real time with other people. Unskilled tracers will absolutely never accept to participate in something like this. Yes, it is possible to cheat in Magma the same way you could cheat with a time-lapse, but there are always workarounds and ways to know if the person is tracing. That's why most tracers will panic or become defensive when you bring up drawing together in real time. Teru here would give us multiple examples, 4 actually, with one being from Asami, right? Every one of them getting defensive when asked to draw live, saying things like, oh, I don't want to, this is all drama farming, I've already provided proof, the usual. Teru would say, but this is Chokopaii we're talking about. Someone who always seems to be one step ahead from people that point out she's using AI. By tracing with AR and learning how to make her time-lapses appear very legit. Unfortunately for Chokopaii though, I've seen way more convincing tracer time-lapses before. I had invited Michi and her sister Chokopaii, while fully aware that Michi as Chokopaii had done Magma sessions before. She did not know I had this information. Michi would use her best friend Nyanyaqwi, so Maria, as a replacement for Chokopaii. That's because Michi and Chokopaii are the same person. Maria's trace style is very similar to Chokopaii after all. If it wasn't Maria, it would be another one of her tracer friends acting as Chokopaii. And finally, Michi was going to use AR or a similar technique to trace in Magma. So this was our DM exchange. Michi never replied back. So here we can see Teru DMing Michi saying, I'm free any day. I'm only doing this on the condition that you and Chokopaii will be present and that you will share your full screen capture. This is when Michi would say, excuse me, what do you mean by sharing a full screen? How do I do that? Like a video call? I don't know. Are we drawing just a sketch or a full render of the work? And who will we need to draw? Teru would say, a call showing your screen with a program like Discord, Google Meet, or TeamViewer, but it needs to capture your whole screen, not just the Magma website tab. Let me know the date and time, I'll be awake for it. Almost 2 weeks later, on November 11th, 2025, Teru would say, still waiting for a reply, and they would never get it. They'd get ghosted. I was expecting the Magma session to happen as Chokopaii had hosted multiple Magma sessions in the past after all, to prove she wasn't tracing while cheating in the Magma board anyway. Here we can see proof of that in her main Chokopaii Telegram group. I won't be disclosing the methodologies and tools that you can use to know when someone is tracing in Magma. But I cannot stress enough that when someone wants to cheat, they will find a way to cheat. Time lapses, real videos, or even drawing in real time cannot be fully reliable when dealing with fraudsters. This is an issue as it erodes trust and credibility for everyone else. But just like how there's ways to cheat, there are equally enough ways to know when they are cheating. Going back to Michi's tweet, providing PSD files and showing layers really does nothing when the image is traced. The excuses that you usually hear when someone tries to pass off an AI-generated image as a hand-drawn are usually, I paint everything in one layer, or I already merged everything, or I lost the file, as these are situations that also happen to real artists. I don't think having files unavailable is strange unless it happens exclusively to images that look AI-generated, then painted over, and not ones that look traced. This brings us to the next subsection, Trace Timelapses 5. Now let's take a look at the timelapses Michi had uploaded to the Google Drive folder. So here we can see 3 different timelapses, 2 in Clip Studio and 1 in Procreate. These are sped up GIFs. Teru would say, different face structure, anatomy proportions, and line weight within only a few months. Essentially, these 3 look like they could have been drawn by 3 different artists. So more of the same of what we already saw. However, this leads us to something that was already mentioned, the fact that all these files were uploaded by Nympha Tian on Google Drive. This is Chokopai's original art handle. While the Google Drive link that Michi provided had this name, there's another way to link these accounts. If you use the Wayback Machine to access Chokopai's old card, you can see that the Pixiv button on the bottom right leads to Levadiol. After our DM exchange, Michi went quiet and would stop uploading new art on Twitter. This would be, of course, until January 2026. So more of the same. After their DM exchange, Michi would go quiet and would stop uploading new art on Twitter until January 2026. This would lead us to the next section titled Ghosting Clients Again. This right here is really silly, dude, because it would really push the limits of this whole roleplay that Chokopaii had going on of her acting as her own sister under the Michi identity. Teru would say, on my quote retweet of Michi's post with the Google Drive link, VTuber Celia Vale left a comment mentioning that Chokopaii had scammed them in the past by never delivering a commission. And so here we can see Celia Vale saying, Chokopaii scammed me out of $300 and still has never responded to me about it. It seems that Celia had tried to contact Chokopaii multiple times in the past to no avail. From my QRT, they learned about Michi supposedly being Chokopaii, so this led to the following exchange. So here we can see Celia replying to Michi saying, please return my $300. It is shameful that your sister, or you, ran away with my money like that. Are you not ashamed to be a scammer or to be related to a scammer? You can't say that you look up to your sister while also saying you have nothing to do with her. Refund my $300. I can even ask someone from Russia to accept the money if you don't have PayPal. To which Michi's account would reply with, oh, I'm so sorry about that. She told me she'd contacted you, with a crying emoji. To which Celia would say, she didn't until today, and I did message your other account about how she still hadn't responded in September. And so next up in the document, we see multiple images of the DM exchanges that had initially put that VTuber in touch with Chokopaii. At first, Chokopaii was responsive when they were talking about the price and how much it would cost and which PayPal email to send it to. And of course, Chokopaii would say, hey, send it to this PayPal account, but also it's very important to make sure that this transfer is for friends and family, not for a merchant. This is because when you send money to someone on PayPal as friends and family, you withdraw your right of refund. This is something you should never do when you're buying a service from someone. But the VTuber Celia fell for it because, well, they trusted Chokopaii. They were following their instructions. This would be on January 2025, and Chokopaii would then say after the payment had arrived that they would have all of February free just for this commission. However, at the end of January and beginning of February, Celia would send a total of 3 different follow-up messages. And Chokopaii would reply on February 11th, saying, hey, I saw that message, sorry, I've just posted a proof video to get people off my back, I'll get to your work soon. Celia would then again make 3 follow-up messages, and we would find ourselves in March. More specifically, March 4th. Chokopaii would finally reply saying, I'm sorry, I'll send you a sketch tomorrow. 10 days would pass by, and Chokopaii would say, hello, I'm sorry I've had problems in my life. I'm just starting to get in touch. Please wait for updates during this month or early next. On March 18th, they would send a very simple sketch, right? Barely any details, just an outfit mostly. After the sketch, a month would pass, no updates, no replies to any feedback that the VTuber had given. On April 9th, she'd say, hi, it's been a long time, would it be possible to receive a refund? On April 20th, hello, please see my above message. On April 21st, Chokopaii would finally reply again saying, hello, I was in the hospital, now I'm home, sorry for missing, couldn't respond normally. To which Celia would say, hope you're feeling better, can I get a refund please? Chokopaii would say, I'm sorry, but can you wait 2 days? I'll draw everything. I didn't think it would take so long, and then would proceed to ghost Celia. She'd still try to get in touch with her, right, up until May, and then would realize, oh yeah, she's not getting a single response. After this whole interaction with Michi, right, her sister, would happen on Twitter, Chokopaii would add Celia on Discord. But after adding her, she again would ghost her and wouldn't respond. So essentially a 6-month nightmare with $300 missing. Again, not a small amount of money. Teru would say, Chokopaii mentioned that she was at the hospital during April, and that's why she had not replied to Celia's DMs dating back to March 18th. But during that time, Chokopaii was actively posting on Michi's account. And here we can see there was a new drawing almost every few days. 15 in April alone. After hearing that Michi was Chokopai's sister, Celia decided to reach out to her to see if she could get in contact with Chokopaii. At this point, she didn't know Michi was Chokopaii. So after Michi had given Celia Chokopai's Discord, she would ghost her, and we can also see how in DMs with Chokopaii on Discord, Celia would be ghosted too, up until September 2025. So this lasted almost 9 months. At this point, Celia was getting desperate. This was around the same time that Michi, on October 29th, 2025, had made her pity post saying, recently many people on Twitter have started to hate on me and accuse me of using AI without any evidence. It's really hurtful. So Celia would quote tweet that, saying, please ask your sister to return my $300. She used the PayPal email blank. Does anyone else recognize it? So here Teru would say, while pointing to this image with an arrow in the document, again, I cannot get over the formatting, Celia's quote retweet of Michi's October 29th post started getting a lot of attention, and someone reached out with information about the PayPal email she had sent money to. As PayPal is banned in Russia, artists often have to use middleman services to receive payments. The email didn't belong to Chokopaii, but a middleman on Telegram. Celia decided to contact them. It's not the middleman's job to make sure every commission is delivered, as they are only facilitating a service for the payment. Celia decided to reach out to the intermediary on Telegram, as this was probably the only way she could still get her money back. The middleman provided Celia with Chokopai's Telegram account so she could get in contact with her, and at long last, Celia got a response from Chokopaii. So here, Chokopaii was very responsive. She'd say, listen, I'm going to get you your money on November 4th. Just please remove the post where you can see the PayPal email, as it's not mine but the intermediaries, and you'll be compromising other artists. I will return the money to you. And lo and behold, she'd actually end up sending it way earlier than November 4th, saying, I managed to send the money ahead of schedule and I returned your money. Please delete the message where PayPal is visible and as soon as possible, as the middleman is not at fault. And if you can, please delete your messages where you wrote to my sister Michi. So now that her way of making money was threatened, now that the email was out and about, she finally stopped ghosting Celia. And after almost a year of having $300 held hostage, she got that back. Teru would say Chokopaii agreed to return Celia's money on November 4th. Celia finally got her money back, but as of me writing this, the other client who got ghosted has not been able to get their money back. The refund was done ahead of time, not because Chokopaii was kind enough to expedite it, but rather because the middleman made an agreement with her and would be paid late instead. So in the end, it was the middleman's money that was used to refund Celia. And here we can see the middleman himself admitting this in DMs with Celia on Telegram. Despite all that happened, Chokopaii never really apologized to Celia, and instead, a week later on November 9th, 2025, she decided to post the commission sketch she had sent to Celia back in March 2025 on her private Telegram with the following caption, which translates to, as shitty as always, bro. After Michi's post, and seeing how more people were becoming aware of her schemes, Chokopaii decided to abandon Michi and make another Twitter account instead. Although Chokopaii was supposedly retired and inactive while she was operating as Michi and Mashiro, she was secretly posting AI adoptables on Fur Affinity as Chokopaii around this time. So look, if you don't know what Fur Affinity is, I'm envious of you. If you do, God bless you. Point is, she had directed her efforts towards furries because I'm sure she understands that they have a lot of money to spend on things like adoptables and art. She'd be posting this rat, I guess, on October 15th, 2025, using the Chokopaii account on Fur Affinity. This was her getting ready to make a full comeback because the next section is titled Chokopaii Returning from Retirement. Chokpai's new account, Chokopaii with 2 zeros, was created during October 2025, probably after Michi's October 29th tweet, but wouldn't become active until December 2025. On December 1st, she deleted her retirement post from Telegram. Just like when she made a new account for Michi, Chokopaii said her new account was made because her old one was blocked. So in other words, shadow banned because of NSFW drawings, right? A very handy excuse. The document would continue, my first and last interaction with Chokopaii was during October, under her disguise as Michi, when I was planning to draw in Magma with her. To no one's surprise, when I found out about her new account during December, I was already blocked. Turns out I wasn't the only person that was blocked in her new account. Multiple artists who had commented on Michi's tweet and people who had called her out before were also blocked in this new account. So she pretty much just pre-ordered their blocking. she was ready. This time around, I think Chokopaii finally realized that everyone's seen through all her tricks and lies, and ignoring people is way more effective. So instead she hides comments mentioning AI and blocks the accounts that sent the message. And on top of that, when an image is being quote retweeted, she can't hide comments, so she blocks the accounts and turns off comments in the artwork that is being quote retweeted. Take, for example, the first artwork she posted in this account, which also happens to be plagiarized, this time from the artist Seven Hayes, using the same technique, right? Going through image to image, same pose, same character, same outfit, but different art style. Comments were turned off under that artwork as another Russian artist, Kabacha, made a post warning people about Chokopai's new account. Kabacha is one of the multiple Russian artists that have been aware of Chokopaii schemes for a long time. As such, Chokopaii has made fun of her on multiple occasions in the past. More recently, this includes mocking Kabacha by making edits with her IRL face. This would of course be done on Chokopai's Telegram account. After turning off comments, Chokopaii went quiet in her new account and wouldn't post again until 2 weeks later. On December 22nd, 2025, once again, this new artwork was plagiarized from another Russian artist, Ringekko-tan. Her artwork had only been posted a few days before Chokopaii. So here we can see on the left the original on December 19th, and on the right we can see Chokopai's on December 22nd. So yeah, you know how this works by now, right? Image to image, different art style, same pose, same character, same outfit. According to Chokopaii, who posted this on her private Telegram account 1 hour after Ringekko's post on Twitter, this was going to be a coincidence. So here you can see Chokopaii saying, "I was so excited I thought I'd post some art today, then I saw Ringekko's art and I don't get why it looks so similar. Even though this is the first time I've ever seen it. Are we living in the Matrix? I can already feel them dragging me into another plagiarism scandal, but fuck that." Then she would say, "Fuck, Ringekko blocked me too." But months before, in March 2025, Chokopaii was blocked by Ringekko on her other account. And she had actually complained about it, or at least made fun of it on her Telegram. So to Teru, this wasn't a coincidence, right? This was like a vendetta. If you blocked Chokopaii, she would take revenge later on you by plagiarizing your work. The document would then continue. Unlike her previous account, she has now moved on from Hololive/VTuber fan art to gacha games. It makes sense. As the VTuber space is filled with artists, they are more likely to point out that she's tracing AI. Still, Chokopaii has continued to plagiarize multiple artists in her new account up to this day, more brazenly than before. On February 22nd, 2026, yet another artist, Uof, made a post about Chokopaii plagiarizing their friend's artwork. Chokopaii turned off the comments on the artwork that Uof had QRT'd and blocked them. And just like any other time before, when someone points out what Chokopaii is doing, she and her friends just laugh about it in her private Telegram. On that same day, February 22nd, 2026, and in reference to Uof's quote tweet, she would say, "Write more documents exposing me, it turns me on." While hiding comments and blocking people is effective on Twitter, it's even easier to get away with being a tracer fraud on her Instagram, where comments can be entirely deleted instead of just hidden. Around this time, the Grok Edit image feature was added to Twitter, so anyone could edit anything other people posted to the site without permission. Chokopaii, someone very familiar with plagiarizing and running other artists' work through image to image, would happen to find this feature very convenient. So just so there's no confusion, this is at the end of 2025, right? December 30th, more specifically, in which she says in her private Telegram group, "There's a lot of whining on Twitter about the new feature. Get it through your head that AI rules the world. Here's some content for you." On February 22nd, 2026, she would also comment on this again, saying, "How ironic that these idiots are trying to assert their rights on a social network where AI controls literally everything, and Elon Musk lets the AI practice on their posts. So let them shut up and go to Blue Sky and write their documents there. Yeah, that's right, nobody needs them here." So yeah, Chokopaii seems to really like billionaires, whether it be Pavel Durov or Elon Musk. At this point, it's quite obvious the kind of man that she's into. But if you were on Twitter when that feature actually got released, you would have seen the amount of artists that were absolutely shocked to the core that any of their art can just be twisted into a prompt with the click of a button by other users. And yet here we had Chokopaii celebrating it. Teru would then say, just like Chokopaii, a lot of the slop raiders running Patreon and Twitter accounts don't even bother typing their own prompts anymore and instead plagiarize other artists' works with image to image. So here we can see on the left another drawing that was made by Enhaze, someone that Chokopaii had plagiarized before, and on the right we can see another Twitter account by the name of Yuyumi SFW with the same exact pose, same exact character, same exact outfit, but of course ran through image to image under a different art style. Chokopaii's style in this account looks just a bit different from the one in her previous one. It is still stolen and trained from Croquette's art. However, a bot update now has a variation in the style output. So on the left, we can see 4 different illustrations made by Chokopaii's AI usage, trying to copy the artist Croquette, and on the right, we can see an AI that was specifically trained from Croquette's art. And so what Teru is trying to say here is that while Chokopaii's art does have similarities to Croquette's art, there's clearly some sort of a variation in the AI that makes it a tiny bit different. It's not one-to-one compared to the AI that was specifically trained to emulate that art style. The document would then continue. On a request from a doc collaborator, I've refrained from mentioning the bot name in this document. This is a Russian Telegram bot that a lot of Russian tracers use. The reason Russian tracers opt to use this bot is because it's more accessible than English AI generation sites that require payment and do not take Russian cards. The bot works with tokens that you could buy with a Russian card or earn for free by referring people to use the bot. So yeah, very handy. I'm guessing that most of these people don't really use this bot with a credit card, they use it by referring people and then they just create new accounts to refer themselves. That's just how a lot of Telegram bots work. And so this would lead us to the next subsection titled Selling Procreate Brushes. While Chokopaii has finally removed no AI from her bio, she is now trying to sell Procreate brushes as if the images had been made from scratch by her, when all she is doing here is using the filling tool, blurring the edges and adding sparkles. There is no rendering done in this time-lapse. And here we can see that time-lapse in question. There really is no drawing going on. no rendering either. This was Chokopaii just making it seem like her brushes were making her achieve these exact results, when in reality, it was AI, obviously. Or at least, according to Teru. This is not the first case of an art scammer selling brushes. Famously, an artist that goes by Ylanest sells digital art courses and has over 1,500 brushes for sale. Some brush packs cost up to $150, while her videos consist of her pretending to render on Procreate by a deceptive method of using the eraser tool on layers to reveal the AI render underneath. It's a big ol' industry, guys. And as AI gets more advanced, people will figure out more ways to scam, and it'll get bigger and bigger. This would lead us to the next subsection titled Delusional Mental Behavior. On December 30th, 2025, Chokopaii posted this on her main art Telegram. This would be a 2025 artist summary template. The whole point of this is having 12 slots in which an artist shows off the drawing they're most proud of for each given month during the year. They'd also have a text post with it saying things like, there were highs, there were lows, there were moments where I wanted to give up. This year was hard, very hard, especially because of the huge wave of hate that fell on me after the accusations of AI and doxing, which I didn't commit. There were nights where I just sat and cried, hysterics, nervous breakdowns, etc., right? Like the same exact playbook used in previous posts, really just acting like the victim. Teru would say, to put it bluntly, reading this after having learned about everything she had done in the past, which I have not covered in this document as I tried to keep it specifically related to AI and tracing instead of what people typically think about when they hear drama, I can only imagine this person is not just a scammer but also a compulsive liar. I used machine translations for this document, but I also had Russian helpers who spoke English confirm the accuracy of these translations. One of the translator's comments about Chokopai's voice messages was, the translation doesn't show how cruel and creepy what she writes is, and this is something I mentioned before. These translations don't really do justice to how crazy or delusional sounding these messages really are. Teru would then say, from August to October, those 3 months of art block and silence that Chokopaii mentions in her post just happened to be when Michi and Mashiro's accounts were actively posting instead. That's because in her 2025 summary, August, September, and October would be missing art. This is because, no doubt, she was focusing on Michi and Mashiro's accounts. This is what Teru is implying here. Teru would continue, as I had mentioned earlier, Chokopaii still ridicules the artist she had doxed before, while claiming that she never doxed her, like in the message above, despite the artist not being active on social media anymore. These posts from Chokopai's shitpost telegram, right, the private telegram from February 2026, are making fun of said artist who is currently pregnant. We can see her saying here, I don't give a shit about this person, even if she has a miscarriage, because she's still that fucking bitch who loves to whine about how bad she has it. Even if they cut her up into 10 pieces, I wouldn't give a shit. She's just a fucking piece of shit. The next day, on February 15th, 2026, she would also make another post saying, guys, I'm pregnant. Please don't post about me on outside, or I'll definitely have a miscarriage, crying emoji. So here again, she's making fun of this person. And when she says outside, she's referring to a Russian Telegram group in which they expose fraudsters like Chokopaii. But this wouldn't be it, of course. She really wouldn't let this poor pregnant lady just live her life. She'd bring her up again on March 13th, 2026 in a voice message, saying, this is my absolute favorite take. When I joked about Blank's abortion, they're like, God, how dare you bring up personal stuff just because of some online squabbles? Well, because she was the one who attacked me first. It's just an online conflict. It shouldn't spill over into real life. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Ha 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 ha. The person who literally pinned everything on me and made herself out to be the victim, I have no right to touch her personal life? Yeah, fuck that. I don't give a shit. Teru would say, you would think that from these posts, we're talking about an entirely separate situation or a long-time feud. Yet all this toxicity is merely because someone simply told people that Chokopaii was tracing AI. And so this would lead us to the next subsection titled Fake Improvement. On March 22nd, 2026, Chokopaii posted a before and after comparison of her art improvement. The 2014 art is part of Chokopai's improvement meme I had shown earlier in the document, but it's attributed to 2015 in here, not 2014. Alright, so there are two images here, right? The first image is something that Chokopaii had posted back in 2024, showing art from 2015-2024 with this coincidental 2023 art block, right? I had already shown this. But when it comes to this subsection, Teru is referencing a tweet that was made in 2026 on the new Chokopaii account. Here we can see the image that was used in 2015 on the previous template again, but this time Chokopaii would claim that it's from 2014, comparing it to an AI trace she made in 2026. Teru would say, this proved that the template image was real, as it had been deleted from Chokopai's account and there were no online sources for the picture. This is referring to the one that was made in 2024 with that little art block in 2023. Beginning with 2019, we can find that art attributed to a Commission's portfolio account called Vanu and posted on May 18th, 2019. The other artworks and auctions uploaded have the Nymphia Tian watermark or linked to her Fur Affinity account. So this is yet another identity. The 2020 image is accurate as it dates back to February 6, 2020. This is also a Commission's site portfolio account for Nymphia Tian. However, I want to point out that the 2021 art is actually from April 2020 as it had been posted on Nymphia Tian's VK account. So VK is like Russian Facebook. tracing AI will not improve your art skills. As a reminder, Asami was exclusively tracing AI for 3 years, and when the time came to maybe finally draw something without the aid of tracing, she was still unable to draw anything by herself and still had to trace an AI image. So this section here was to show that obviously this was fake improvement, but that before incorporating AI into her workflow, Chokopaii was slowly but surely improving. There was an art style there. Now she uses AI, and this AI is not going to improve her real skills. It's just not going to happen. When you do that, you're essentially giving up on this hobby. You don't want to improve anymore. So look, I'm sure this was already one hell of a roller coaster when it came to Chokopaii, all these different accounts, her role-playing as her 15-year-old sister, charging egregious amounts of money for AI-traced commissions, ghosting clients, making fun of a pregnant lady, doxing anyone who speaks against her if she can. But as crazy as this all is, she also happened to have a sidekick, Nyanyaqwi, otherwise known as Maria, which leads us to the next section. Nyanyaqwi, Chokopaii's best friend. Nyanyaqwi, who also goes by Tun618 or Maria, is one of Chokopaii's closest friends who translated Chokopaii's reply to Diariku to make Chokopaii appear as a victim. Maria seems to have an unwavering loyalty to Chokopaii and is one of the main Russian tracers that interacts with her on Twitter. Her other friends seem to keep their distance on Twitter, probably because Chokopaii is always being called out for tracing while they're doing the same, and only interact on Telegram. Both of them really like Chandiyu's style, so they even have one of Chandiyu's drawings as matching avatars on Telegram. But get this, okay? Chokopaii gifted Maria an iPad with the money she scammed from clients on Twitter back in 2025. The artist with no integrity that saw how much money Chokopaii was making by scamming people on Twitter decided to follow her lead. As an example, Maria listed that her prices started at $10 on her Blue Sky, which is now deleted, but updated them to $300 after she started tracing AI. So on the right, we can see the Telegram post made by Maria saying, "Guys, I'm an iPad kid now," with an iPad and a pencil. And then the next post would be, "Choco bought this for me, don't judge me, I'm a kept woman." So joking around that she was already taken by Chokopaii. But even before getting her iPad, Maria was already looking into ways to hide tracing. And here we can see 2 posts made by her. The first one being on February 2025 saying, "Hey guys, does anyone know if you can hide layers in Clip Studio? I just want to use AI to trace, please help." The second one was made on the 2nd of May 2025. "One look is enough for me to close the channel, and when someone accuses me of AI, all it takes is a smirk from me and that person ends up apologizing." Like Chokopaii, Maria has 2 Telegram channels, one for art and one for shitposting. Maria was always aware that Chokopaii was Michi, Mashiro, Laverial, etc. She had retweeted Michi's October post, but quietly removed the retweet after I had replied to it to avoid becoming involved. She would follow the same pattern of behavior as Chokopaii. She'd very clearly say, "No AI" in her bio, and when someone would confront her in replies saying, "Wow, so everybody's tracing AI these days," she'd say, "This is very offensive. I have a speed paint for this art as I do for all my art." Or another reply where she says, "Darling, I'm not trying to prove anything to you personally. If you could find my Telegram channel, you can find my drawings starting from 2021. Teru would point out that both of these comments defending herself are no longer findable on Twitter. They've been deleted. And so, just in case it didn't get through your head, Teru would yet again list red flags that you should look out for when you encounter an account like Nyanyaqwi. Joining Twitter recently, posting high-skill hololive fan art, right, so a fandom with a strong fan base that just so happens to have curvy anatomy. Another red flag is great anatomy, but of course, some weird things happening, like 6 fingers, wonky hands, looping hair, and of course having no digital footprint. The idea that this highly skilled artist just spawned one day, right, and started posting. In this case though, Teru the detective managed to find old art of Maria under a different username, Mary Meow. I think the difference here speaks for itself. I'm literally not going to say anything, man. I mean, holy shit. Maria's old art, compared to the art that she posts today, is not even in another world or galaxy. It's in another universe. We see 3 different examples here: November 2023, January 2024, and March 2024. These are the drawings you'd expect someone who is just starting to draw to post. Someone who is an amateur, someone who's barely started to learn how to draw. And yet by 2025, this is the kind of art you expect from someone who's been drawing for over 10 years extremely passionately and regularly. This to many was no doubt damning evidence, but there was even more. Maria was still posting original art that wasn't traced as far back as February 2025. But then all of a sudden, they had become an expert. Teru would say, pro artists aren't created in a vacuum, and generally you will be able to trace back an artist's digital art online even if it's under a different username or old social media accounts. It seems that Maria's previous Twitter was hacked, so she couldn't delete her old art to cover her tracks. Had that happened though, she has an Amino Apps profile you could look up that shows her previous art from 2023. You really can't hide anything from Teru, like you straight up can't. And just like the previous art we already saw, there's a huge skill jump, but also a completely different art style. Now, as I said, this is a pattern of behavior. Maria would also have traced time lapses posted to her account to prove that she's not using AI, just like Chokopaii. But she'd make a pretty big mistake in posting one time lapse in particular. This third time-lapse right here on the right would get deleted because, according to Teru, Maria forgot to hide the layer she used to trace the horn and flashed it for a second. And what's interesting is that this horn belongs to another image she had traced just a few days before. Very embarrassing. But according to Teru, there would be another time-lapse with even worse slip-ups, and it would all be in the face. At this supposed skill level, drawing a side view face and eyes should be relatively simple. You wouldn't have to trace over a previous face or eyes you drew before. Evidently, Maria didn't set those Procreate layers as hidden so they wouldn't show in the final time-lapse, and she only noticed they were in the time-lapse after uploading it to Twitter. The post was then deleted. So yeah, even in Procreate where you can hide layers, it was obvious that there was some tracing involved here when it came to the eyes. But that wouldn't be everything weird in this time-lapse. There would also be an instance of 6 fingers. Teru would say it's very easy to miss as it happens near the end. Maria was not paying attention and traced an extra finger. Of course, by the time she had noticed and deleted the image on Twitter, it was too late. People had already shared it and uploaded it to Danburu, the image board. Maria went back and fixed the fingers, then re-uploaded the image. Teru would say a single artwork having an extra finger is not indicative of AI tracing. This is a result of multiple red flags accumulating over time. Artists can make human mistakes, and in the past, before AI, you can find artworks where artists accidentally added an extra finger while drawing hands. I would like to note that the amount of artists accidentally adding extra fingers has increased since then though. So to some of you, when you hear Teru talk about things like this, it might seem obvious to you, but for a lot of people it's not. There have been actual witch hunts against real artists because of the rise of AI and the lack of trust in the arts community. This is why Teru makes these disclaimers. It's important for someone who doesn't know art while reading this. And of course, continuing with this pattern of behavior, Maria, just like Chokopaii, would post art that is very similar to Chandaiyu's style, using what seems to be a LoRa that was trained exclusively on Chandaiyu's drawings to make her own AI-generated traced illustrations that she would post on her Twitter. The resemblance is insane. And of course, seeing that Maria was probably doing this for the same reason that Chokopaii was, money, she would also charge for commissions. At the current time, Maria is taking commissions starting at $300. Her prices were $135 for a half body back in April 2025 before raising them to $300 during December 2025. We confirmed that unfortunately many people had commissioned her before finding out she was tracing. The following images are from her card portfolio. On one of these images, you'd see a missing hand. And on another image, you'd see incredible anatomy, and yet there would be looping hair, another sign of AI. But that wouldn't be all, because we wouldn't have just one person pretending to be a 15-year-old in this controversy. We'd have 2. And here we go. Encouraged by Chokopaii and her multiple accounts, Maria would try to do the same strategy of making an alt persona to scam more people with traced commissions. On February 2025, this account was created, Mei-chan 200. This would, of course, I'm tired of saying it, but pattern of behavior, the same exact thing Chokopaii was doing. In fact, it would be such a Control-C, Control-V to what Chokopaii was doing that Maria on this alt account would claim that she was also 15 years old. So weird. They would spawn around the same exact time according to Teru and would immediately start interacting with each other on Twitter. And to Teru, again, this would be another opportunity to point out red flags, but by now I think you already know them. And on top of this 15-year-old artist would already have a Patreon ready to go while charging $200 for commissions. But what if Mei-chan was yet another 15-year-old that was being roleplayed by Chokopaii? This is when Teru would outline why they think this is genuinely Maria's alt. Unlike Choco, Maria didn't follow herself when she made Mei-chan 200. Instead, she followed Michi, Chokopai's other alts like Lavariol and Kira Uep, and the rest of her Russian tracer circle. The reason I believe this is Maria and not Chokopaii is based on these observations. Number 1. When Mei-chan made her account, Chokopaii had yet to gift Maria her iPad plus Procreate. Maria was still using a regular tablet and Clip Studio. Mei-chan mentions using desktop Clip Studio Paint. Number 2. Although fluctuating a lot, the style did not seem immediately similar to images posted by Chokopaii, Michi, or Mashiro where you could make a vague connection between the faces. And number 3, the desaturated color values of the first few images Mei-chan had uploaded resembled Maria's color palette values from earlier artworks instead of Chokopai's. And here we can see 2 artworks by Mei-chan and 1 artwork by Nyanyaqwi, and yes, they look very similar, same color palette, same saturation, almost as if posted by the same person. And so this would lead us to the final section involving both Chokopaii and Nyanyaqwi. With Teru saying, as it currently stands, I don't expect either Chokopaii or Nyanyaqwi to apologize or stop what they are doing. If anything, Chokopaii will find it amusing that someone has dedicated so many pages to talk about her, and ultimately, all publicity is good publicity for her. But this document was never made with the intention to get a response out of her anyway. And even if they delete their accounts, I doubt they will give up on tracing. After all, this is a very easy scam to run. If they stop, it will be a matter of time until they make new accounts and start over again by pretending to be different artists. This was the case with Misui, who had already made 3 accounts consecutively, and Asami, who after miserably failing to fool people, deleted everything regarding the situation, continued to post as usual, and recently made a new account pretending to be a new artist. We'll check that out at the end of the video. Chokopaii has multiple Russian friends running the same tracing scam on Twitter at the moment. Some of these tracers also have VGen accounts. VGen staff does not have a good framework to tell when their users are tracing, so reports usually don't do anything. There was a situation recently where they finally banned a tracer, only to reinstate their account when the tracer presented a forward screen recording despite all of the overwhelming evidence pointing out that this person has always been tracing before. So if you don't know what VGen is, it's a platform where only approved artists can sell their art, and they have a strict no AI policy, so the entire platform is rooted in trust that you're buying art from real people. But unfortunately, even they can't detect when someone is tracing using AR or something, because who would go to such length to fake being an artist? So Teru would say, for this reason, I urge clients to at least look into the backgrounds of new artists they are planning to commission. Do not trust VGen to do the vetting. The people who do this deflect by calling these situations witch hunts. I don't believe that term applies to a situation where you are letting others know about fraud. I am aware, however, that there's certain people, more often non-artists, that love pointing out fingers and screaming AI towards artworks that when analyzed by a competent artist do not show signs of being AI or traced in the slightest. The kind of people that see the bucket tool not filling in the last 2 pixels in the line art intersection and somehow find that suspicious when it's simply a normal digital art occurrence. Because I don't expect Chokopaii or her friends to stop making new identities to take scam commissions, I will expand the document to include a summary of red flags I had provided through the document to spot traced AI. Did you think I was done with Chokopaii and her friends' alt accounts? I would like to present yet another account likely related to them. Now look, this alt account right here would be called ML Kamari. Again, another red flag showing up out of nowhere, amazing talent, no digital footprint, etc, etc. Teru believes that this account might belong to Chokopaii or Nyanyaqwi, but unlike the other instances of alt accounts, they couldn't find a very direct source to prove that this account was related to them. Instead, they would do some very impressive, detailed detective work, looking at patterns on dresses in certain drawings, analyzing the tiniest details, like known workflows used by Maria or Chokopaii, as well as even looking at the location displayed on Twitter to determine that this has to belong to either Maria or Chokopaii. To Teru, this is proof that these 2 best friends are becoming smarter with making new alt accounts that are not directly tied to their previous identities, continuing on with the scam and making money from unsuspecting clients. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the rest of this document would talk about different artists that are doing the same thing based on proof from their art, whether it be their past art versus their art today, whether it be the incredible evolution of their art or just their shady behavior. But as impressive as Teru's document was with all the evidence, the proof, the formatting, it didn't cause Chokopaii or Maria to just disappear overnight. In fact, they would end up replying with their own Google Docs. Alright, so before any official responses were made by both Chokopaii and Maria, the first form of response would be made by Chokopaii as an acknowledgement in her private Telegram channel. She'd say, "Today, the same person writes about me on all social networks that I'm an AI tracer. I don't really care, I'm just silently blocking. I haven't cared for a long time, it just feeds me, huh." Soon afterwards, on the 19th of June 2026, Maria would actually make a tweet first, before Chokopaii. She'd tag Teru and then say, "Teru, a fighter for justice, the ultimate AI exposer, the great hope of real artists, or a liar, someone who loves organizing harassment and falsely accusing actual artists. Today I'm presenting a document I spent around 36 hours writing. It's dedicated to Teru's false accusations." Now the tweet would be longer, but Maria would delete it. On June 20th, she would post it again, this time removing the first few lines that we read. Instead, what she'd do is tag Teru and say that Teru falsely accused me of using AI. I wrote a 220-page document refuting all of it. Please, if you believed her, read this document and stop writing offensive things to me. I didn't write this document because I want revenge, I wrote it because I'm genuinely heartbroken for my own hands. The hands that draw everything completely by myself. If I were actually a tracer, I would have just ignored the whole situation. I never would have reacted like this because there wouldn't have been any real effort or soul put into my art in the first place. But seeing how easily people believed her accusations broke my heart. It killed every bit of inspiration I had left. I no longer see the point in continuing to draw if so many people think it's nothing more than tracing. This devaluation is slowly rotting my mental state. I can't sleep because of tachycardia. I can't stop thinking about it. I still want to draw, but I can't because now it feels completely meaningless. I thought that after our private conversation and a magma session together, this would finally be over, but she wouldn't even allow me that. She talked to me as if I had no feelings, as if she didn't care about all my experience, like I wasn't even a person to her. My reputation is already ruined. No matter what I do, I'm sure most people will just ignore this document and her followers will keep commenting AI and Tracer under my artworks, treating me like a soulless machine. As if Teru is right that I'm not human and don't deserve to make art. I truly hope that at least some of the people who believe her will read this and realize that I don't deserve any of this. In my whole life, I have never offended anyone. I have never had a conflict because someone else's grief makes me feel very bad myself. And even now, I so want to protect myself, but I understand that this document will make her feel bad. I don't want any of that. I already tried posting this document yesterday, but the truth is I felt insecure and ended up deleting it. Why did the situation have to happen? Alright, so definitely a very emotionally charged statement here. You either feel bad for her, wondering what she might have written in her document, or you might be seeing the same pattern that was talked about in the Teru document. Remembering how Maria was the one who actually wrote Chokopai's statement in which she pretty much acted like the victim. How this might be a page from that playbook. So is she actually a victim or is she not? Well, let's check out the Google document. Alright, so this document is around 97 pages. I don't know how exactly. Teru had 17 pages dedicated just for Maria. The rest was for Chokopaii. This document doesn't even talk about Chokopaii. These 97 pages are purely just about Maria and her point of view. So let's see what she has to say, and I will take the liberty to sum things up if things get repetitive. So this would start off with Maria saying, "So, I'd like to start by pointing out that before publishing the document, Teru made absolutely no attempt to contact or interact with me. I had no idea whatsoever that anyone was preparing a document about me. Why am I mentioning this? Because if you've read Asami's document, which was also written by Teru, you probably know that Teru did reach out to her before it was published. She messaged Asami both in private DMs and by email, asking her to provide evidence, such as speed paints, recording of them drawing together magma, or actual files of her artwork. She did the same exact thing with Chokopaii. She notified her that she was going to write a document about her, mentioning her username multiple times and even reposting all the derogatory posts about her. What did I get? Complete silence and total ignoring from her side, plus being confidently labeled a tracer right at the very beginning of her document about me before she had provided even a single piece of proof. Let's fast forward a little because the whole issue of Teru ignoring me didn't end there. So here we'd see an image of DMs between Maria and Teru on June 14th, 2026, in which Maria sends 4 different messages trying to reach out and have a conversation with Teru, and Teru ignores her. Maria would say, "And now you're looking at the very reason this document exists. In this screenshot, I tried to contact Teru immediately after reading her document about me. As you can see, from the very first moment, I was more than ready to prove that I can draw my own art by any method Teru herself would choose. I was willing to set up a camera in my room, fully show my face, and whatever it took to completely prove that I create my drawings myself." Maria would then show us a tweet from Teru, in which Teru says, "Since I expect neither of them to address this and completely ignore it, the Danburu man can reach out to me and I will share the rest of her AI circle." This was Teru quote tweeting their own Google Doc. Maria would say, "Here's what Teru wrote on her profile, claiming that I was completely ignoring her. At that point, I thought maybe her private messages simply weren't reaching me for some reason, or Twitter was glitching again, so I decided to leave a comment under that very same post." And here we can see Maria saying, "Hello Teru, I'm not ignoring you, I just wrote you a DM, could you please check it when you have time?" This is when Maria would continue, "I was extremely polite because I genuinely thought it was just a small misunderstanding. I believed that one conversation and providing solid proof would be enough to clear up all the suspicions, but once again I was met with complete silence from Teru. Why didn't I post about the situation on my profile? There are a few reasons. First of all, I'm not a confrontational person. I always try to avoid arguments with people. I don't like drama, because I believe any conflict can be resolved privately between the two people involved. There's no need to drag the entire internet community into it. At this point, I already have some guesses about why she chose not to reply to me, neither in DMs nor under the comment, but we'll talk about that later." Maria would then say, "Teru deleted that post but still never replied to me." So this is of course referencing the post that Teru made in which they quote tweeted their own document. On that post, apart from my comment, there was only one other comment. Now I have a question for you, my dear readers. Did Teru really not see my message? Another update later. I posted the document and tagged Teru, but then I deleted the post because I wanted to fix some inaccuracies and blur out the usernames of unrelated people in the screenshots. As a bonus, I suddenly got a reply from her in private messages. So here we can see Teru saying, "Hello Maria, your messages were under hidden DMs." To which Maria would say, "Hello, okay, what about magma?" Teru would reply with, "I hope you can understand that I don't hold any grudges or harsh feelings despite what the people you're involved with have done. I have seen other screenshots that I did not talk about or show in the Google Doc, so it's hard for me to trust you at the moment, especially knowing how involved you are with Chokopaii. I don't want this issue to go on forever, but I do believe people can learn from situations and do better. They don't have to be held back by the things they've done in the past. You have the skill to draw on your own after all. I have seen the magmas you have participated in before." To which Maria would reply with, "And what are you trying to say? That being friends with someone automatically makes me an AI?" So here Maria claims that Teru was lying because her account isn't shadow banned, so there's no reason for her to be in hidden DMs. She'd also claimed that Teru was dodging the idea of doing a magma drawing session together. According to Maria, she believes that Teru's feelings towards her are purely based on her friendship with Chokopaii. She did confront her on this with the message we just read out, in which she said, "And what are you trying to say? That being friends with someone automatically makes me an AI?" To which Teru would reply with, "I don't think what others do define you even when you're friends. Also, in this case, we're not talking about someone who only uses AI. In fact, I assume my replies will be forwarded to her anyway, which is why I hope you can understand I can't take anything you say at face value." Maria would say, "No, I'm not going to tell Chokopaii about this. I'm too lazy to translate. Anyway, why don't we do a magma session?" And Teru says, I just wanted to respond since you DM'd me because I know what it feels like to be ignored. My intent was to just clarify this was not just about AI. Maria would say, to be honest, I don't quite understand what you mean by this. You don't explain anything at all. It's much more painful than being ignored than receiving accusations that don't apply to me. Do you know that my racing heart has kept me awake for 3 days? Oh, never mind. In any case, that was the reason I wanted to resolve everything quickly by going to the magma with you. But now I don't understand what you're trying to say. You clearly refuse to discuss the topic of magma, so you mean you won't believe me in any case? To which Teru would say, you're an artist already and have skill. It's not about how capable you are, but rather artworks that have already been drawn in the past and how you closely involved you were with Chokopaii. I hope that clears things up. So Maria would say, so do you think I'm AI or not? I don't understand anything. Teru, it seems we've come to no conclusions in the end. Tell me clearly, you won't remove my part from the Chokopaii document no matter what evidence I provide? Maria in the document would say this is the 3rd time she ignored my question about the magma session, while also admitting that I am, in fact, an artist and that I do have skill. So if you know I'm an artist, what was all this for, Teru? You deliberately chose to ruin my reputation and call me a fraud just because you're unhappy with the people I'm friends with? Very fair. There was no reply after my last question. So what do we have in the end? Teru refuses to join me in a magma session and refuses to edit the document to remove the misinformation about me. This means she sees herself as the judge and me as the defendant, but for some reason I don't even have the right to a defense. If I hadn't decided to stand up for myself, spending a massive amount of time and nerves, who would have protected me? Who would have actually looked into it? No one, and I wouldn't have received any reply in DMs if it weren't for this document. So far to Maria, this is all very unfair. She feels as though she's been mistreated, like she didn't have a chance to defend herself, and that her reputation is now ruined purely because someone decided that she was an AI user. At the same time though, from Teru's perspective, one could argue that the document was mostly about Chokopaii. This was the main person that was featured there. They might have seen Maria purely as just an extension of Chokopaii, someone who was aiding them in their scamming AI enterprise. But now that we're reading a document that was written by Maria in which she tries her best to defend herself, how does she refute everything that Teru said in their document? Well, this brings us to the next section. Maria would say, that's all for this part, let's move on to her evidence. And now let's talk about my Telegram messages, which Teru translated and used as proof that I use AI and make huge amounts of money from it. We'll go through each one separately. So the first thing we'd see here is that image that Maria had posted in which she showed off an iPad, saying, Chokopaii bought this for me, don't judge me, I'm a kept woman. Maria would claim that this was a joke, that she had used her personal savings of around 65,000 rubles, which was $600 at the time, to buy this. Chokopaii was not the one who bought this for her. They would show an image of the transaction that was done on some sort of banking app showing minus 65,000 rubles. Maria would then justify why she needed an iPad, why it made drawing easier, and would then show the first drawing that they ever drew on the iPad, saying that the reason why they're showing this here is because it'll make an appearance later in the document. She would then show 2 different Telegram messages that she had made that were featured in Teru's document. The first one being, hey guys, does anyone know if you can hide layers in Clip Studio? I just want to use AI to trace, please help. And the other one being, one look is enough for me to close the channel, and when someone accuses me of AI, all it takes is a smirk from me and that person ends up apologizing. Maria would claim that both of these messages were jokes, that even if she was tracing, she would never make it this obvious. This is why she doesn't consider this to be solid evidence of tracing. The next major part here would be about how in Teru's document, we were told that Maria was repeating Chokopaii's pattern in which she acted like a victim when people pointed out that she was tracing, using 2 tweets as an example. The ones that were deleted, in which Maria says, this is very offensive, I have speed paint for this art as I do for all my art, or, darling, I'm not trying to prove anything to you personally, if you could find my Telegram channel, you can find my drawings starting from 2021. Maria would say, quote-unquote, acting like a victim. First of all, where exactly am I acting like a victim? Secondly, even if I were, how am I supposed to behave when someone shows up with 0 proof and calls me AI? Should I go up to her and say, wow, thank you so much, you're right? Or maybe even apologize to her for making her think I'm an AI tracer? Teru, as an artist yourself, how do you usually react when some random person who knows nothing about you or your experience comments, wow, cool AI line art, or something like that? Do you immediately start a stream just for that one person or invite them to draw together in magma? After all, as you yourself say, simple speed paints aren't proof. What I also found interesting are Teru's double standards. So here Maria links an image from the Asami document in which Teru said, proving that you aren't tracing is really simple if you are not tracing AI. This person was invited to draw together in a browser-based Canvas website, but their response was that they don't have to prove themselves to anyone or convince anyone. This website in question being magma.com, this is a simple free way to show everyone you are not tracing. So to Maria, Asami got this chance, Chokopaii got this chance, but again, she didn't. Saying that to her, it seems that Teru doesn't think that she deserves a chance to prove herself in magma. Next up, she wouldn't really understand why this artwork that she had made of Shadow as a human was used in Teru's document. She'd say, I still don't understand whether this was meant in the context of him looking ugly or that he's too beautiful, I don't know. And she'd argue that of course he'd look different from her other drawings, this is a man and she was drawing women. I think Teru included this in their document because there's a very distinct difference in how this character was rendered, the art style he was drawn in, compared to other characters. It doesn't really matter what the gender is, but hey, I could be wrong, it's up to you to decide. Maria would then start talking about the red flags that Teru had in her document, like for example how Nyanyaqwi joined Twitter on June 2025. And the red flag here was that there was no history, no digital footprint, you just show up with amazing art. Maria would say, sometimes I get the feeling that Teru is jealous of Twitter and doesn't want anyone except herself and her friends to post here. And then she'd argue that she's been online since 2017 running a Telegram channel and actually does have quite the history on the internet. This is when she would try her best to address the second red flag, which is, you will notice that despite the pro anatomy, there are multiple tracing elements in their art, instead of a one-time mistake such as wonky hands, extra fingers, and most of the time, long looping hair that lacks coherence. So for the looping hair, Maria would argue that there are no signs of AI even though it might look strange. That's because she draws randomly and can't overthink every single strand and doesn't aim to make everything perfectly correct. She just wanted to look beautiful and please her personally. She'd also have the same argument for the ears, arguing why does every single detail have to be anatomically correct? If we start dissecting any artist's work like this, it would turn out that we're all tracers and there are no real artists left in the world. Just as a reminder, she is referencing these two images right here, right? Clear looping hair and ears that Teru found to be, well, interesting, worth pointing out at least. For the hand that looks kind of weird, Maria would argue that she specifically took a photo of her own hand IRL to draw it, admitting that maybe it didn't turn out great, but still emphasizing that she didn't use any AI here. She would then argue this is a minor flaw, unfortunately she's not a big fan of drawing hands. And finally, when it came to the whole six-finger issue, Maria would say, finally, a genuinely strong argument in your favor, Teru. In this case, I have no proof. It's entirely up to you whether to believe me or not. But yes, it is a mistake. I often screw up hands in this kind of pose. Usually I notice it quickly and fix it, but here I simply didn't catch it in time. The only thing I can say about this is that I have one old drawing from 2019 to 2020 where both hands have 6 fingers. So you can see this isn't the first time it's happened, and it occurred long before AI even existed. So it's definitely interesting that she has done this mistake before, but this was like 6 years ago, and you would assume that someone drawing for more than half a decade wouldn't let something like this so easily pass. I mean, you could make the mistake, but then realize you made it and correct it before posting it. It's interesting to miss 6 fingers as an experienced artist and post it anyway. She would then argue that the last image here of this hand has nothing wrong with it. She genuinely is just curious why this was even included in the document. It's kind of doing like this spider pose, right? That's the best way I could describe it if you're not looking at the screen right now. She'd argue even if it does look weird, why does only a machine have the right to make mistakes in a drawing? Isn't making mistakes in certain moments the most human thing there is? These flaws aren't even that critical, and there's nothing here that even remotely resembles AI, except the 6 fingers. I'd also like to mention that all the mistakes she pointed out are only from my very old artworks. Even the profile screenshot Teru used is old because I've already changed my avatar several times since then. Doesn't this mean that when she wrote the document, Teru relied exclusively on outdated information? And so this is interesting to point out, of course, but the whole idea, I think, remains the same. Whether this was drawn years ago or today, Teru's argument was that these illustrations have godly anatomy in certain areas, but then in some others have very inconsistent anatomy. And I think depending on your opinion, the argument could definitely still stand. How is it that you draw a perfect face, a perfect body, a perfect pose, but then end up drawing 6 fingers and not even realizing it until after you post? If it was an element by itself, then people would be willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, but the fact that you also had things like looping hair definitely raises suspicions. That's the problem. Maria would then go ahead and criticize Teru's stance on the idea that an artist needs to have a digital footprint for you to trust them. But if someone just popped up with a lot of skill one day, it doesn't really make them very trustworthy. She'd argue that not everyone has the discipline or desire to run social media accounts. I'm studying art at university, and out of all my classmates, only a couple have any social media related to art. She would then show some of her old art on Instagram, proving that she did have a long history on the internet. And yeah, this must have been around the time that she had started posting for the first time, or even was delving into art. According to her, these were back in 2020. And this brings us to the next section, in which we can see Maria's first ever drawing on an iPad being compared to this more recent drawing in which the art style, the anatomy, literally everything is different. For Maria, this worried her the most, because according to her, Teru was deliberately picking out her most unsuccessful artworks to make herself look right. And how people who are too lazy to double check her claims easily believe it. She'd say, remember that first artwork, right? The very first one I drew on the iPad with great difficulty? Well, then she'd show us some art that she made even before that on Clip Studio. According to her, these were done even before she had received an iPad. She would then say, and here are a few artworks I drew much earlier in Clip Studio. Why didn't Teru choose any of those? Wouldn't it be more logical to compare 2 girls with similar body types instead of picking one with huge breasts and the other one with a small one? I'm not claiming it as fact, but I'm suggesting that she deliberately chose my unsuccessful sketch of Ina specifically to look more convincing to other people. Now, when it comes to this, I think Teru didn't specifically pick this deliberately because it was quote-unquote bad or anything. It's just that this drawing, this first iPad drawing, was done in the same exact year, just a few months apart from that crazy good Narissa drawing. Even if it's your first time drawing on another medium, the foundation should still be there. And this drawing simply doesn't show the same person who had drawn Narissa. At least that's how it seems for me. I'd be curious to see what you think too. If there was like a 5-year or 10-year difference, yeah, I'd believe it. But as it stands right now, just a few months apart, this isn't like regular normal human progress. Unless she's a wizard or something, which is also a possibility. She would then bring up these 3 images that were shown in Teru's document of Maria's old drawings. And she'd argue that what Teru said was a massive skill jump is very reasonable since there was a 3-year gap between this and the new drawings that we saw above, arguing that it's not easy to adapt to digital when you've drawn on paper your whole life. She would then show us a bunch of drawings that she made physically on paper, and while some of them do look cute, none of them are anything close to what's being shown today. These drawings right here were as recent as 2022, and they show us that there's a fundamental misunderstanding on certain anatomical parts of the body. So this never really was about the concept of going from physical to digital. This was about just, the idea that there was a massive skill jump. An artist usually has growing pains when changing mediums when it comes to where they draw, but that doesn't mean that the fundamentals are going to disappear too. Maria would say, Teru's main complaint was that I'm suspiciously good at anatomy, but as you can see, I've never really had any serious problems with it. Man, if we're going to look at this right here, like the perspective is absolutely screwed up. If a normal person showed me this, I wouldn't say you have a serious problem with anatomy. I'd say, hey, you have some more studying to do. But compared to the drawings that she's making now, all of a sudden, miraculously, there's a massive difference. This isn't the same person, period. Is 3 years enough to go from this to the drawings we saw earlier? I'll let you decide, okay? I'm not an expert artist, but there's clearly a massive difference here. Teru's main argument was that there was a massive skill jump specifically from 2024 to 2025, in which they believe Maria started using AI. Maria would argue that for the year of 2024, she spent every single day drawing. This, on top of already having decent skill, meant that this was normal. This is when we would reach the whole infamous Narissa Ravencroft horn incident, right? In which Teru accused Maria of tracing and forgetting to hide a hidden layer. Maria would say that she never uses hidden layers. Also saying, while it is true that this horn was traced, it was traced from my own artwork in order to save time and get details right. Reading her document, it feels like everything I do is either done for AI or because of AI, because everything ultimately comes back to that. Of course, Teru, I have absolutely no other reasons to delete my artworks except AI. None whatsoever. It must be kind of sad sometimes to realize that not everyone is as obsessed with AI as you are, huh? Another thing I wanted to say is how surprised I am by the absolute confidence with which she says the phrase, this horn belongs to another image she had traced just a few days before. And so that's it. Here she argues that Teru was running to conclusions, that there was no proof that she had stolen it from another art piece. And that's it. She doesn't talk more about the horn. She doesn't even specify why she deleted this, right? Because remember, after the time-lapse showed that she was tracing the horn, she would immediately delete it. No mention of that. When it came to the other slip-up, however, the whole 6-finger mistake and the idea that she was tracing eyes on the character, Maria would say that Teru made an oversight here because the time-lapse wasn't deleted, saying that it was published precisely because of her 6-finger mistake, saying that she wanted to show that it was really nothing more than a silly error. Now, she wouldn't link the time-lapse, unfortunately, showing that it wasn't deleted, but whatever, right? Let's just take her word for it. She would then emphasize, yes, I really did trace the eyes from my own previous artworks. Is that illegal or something? Saying that this was totally normal, that there was nothing special or dramatic about it. She would then show 5 different time lapses and would say the first, second, and fifth ones were deleted because Twitter flagged them as 18+. Again, there's nothing to verify here. We have to take her word for it, and sure, we will. Now, this brings us to a very interesting part of the document where I had to do like a double take. So Maria would attach part of Teru's document in which Teru would say, we confirmed that unfortunately many people had commissioned her before finding out she was tracing. The following images are from her card portfolio. Notice the missing hand. At this supposed anatomy skill level, it is unlikely that the arm would be placed in such a position. So here we can see 2 drawings, right? One with a bunny girl and one wearing a blue outfit. Maria would focus on the one with the blue outfit and would highlight the hands, saying, the missing hand? You mean this one right here in the blue glove? But the thing is, in Teru's document, it was very well formatted, right? You can't really mistake any image because there's literally arrows pointing towards any image that's being referenced. You could see that the arrow was pointing specifically at the bunny girl in pink. The arrow literally was pointing at the missing hand in question. And honestly, now that Maria pointed it out, yes, the hands on the blue girl also look kind of weird. But it's interesting how she completely missed the point when it came to the pink bunny girl. It is anatomically inconsistent to have her in this pose and not have any hand showing either. But it seems that Maria misunderstood the accusation here. She'd even add, by the way, how do you even imagine an AI generating art with this kind of detailing? But I think at this point, if any of you watching have seen AI art, you could definitely see it doing something like this. In fact, it could even do more impressive things. At this point, AI can do just about anything, which is why it's such a problem. Maria would then argue that she had spent several weeks working together with her client to achieve full accuracy to the design, and would then even argue that one of her clients would reach out to her and say, yeah, I didn't really find the stuff she said about you that odd. The only thing that was a little weird was the 6 fingers. She'd also argue that she would send Teru's post with Google Doc to a second client of hers. To her, this was proof that if she was actually a scammer and only cared about money, would she have actually reached out to her clients and spoken with them about this? And next up, we would all of a sudden see yet another commission she had drawn that's part of her portfolio, a drawing of Marin, with what Teru said was looping hair. More specifically, godlike anatomy skill, yet messy looping hair always present. Maria would say, thanks for the compliment on the anatomy, but otherwise, Teru, you are really nitpicking way too hard. Real AI tracers have no clue what hair actually is. They just trace the outer silhouette and forget about the internal strands, not to mention that hair is a very flexible element that adapts well to any kind of stylization. I've been writing this document for the 3rd day now, spending an enormous amount of time on it, and I keep asking myself why I even have to explain such obvious things. But then I remember that there are people who believed it right away. One of them is a well-known VTuber, but I won't say who. Just know this as a fact, as an artist you are never safe from documents like this. Wait, is she referring to me? No, I'm not a VTuber. I just have a model. I'm not a VTuber, dude. No. Anyway, to continue, even if Teru decides to write in her doc that you're AI just because she feels like it, people will believe her, not you. Without reading the actual content and without waiting for your side of the story, her word alone will be enough for them. So look, I think I speak to everyone when I say that Teru has definitely cemented the reputation in the artist community as someone who doesn't really accuse people lightly, someone who actually bothers to find evidence and takes a long time to do so. So the track record's definitely there. I did initially stream Teru's document because, it's a Teru document. Find me a document that's better formatted. But when it came to the actual video, I am including the majority of Maria's response, as well as, right after this, Chokopai's response. Do you feel like Maria's document has swayed your opinion so far? I'm curious to hear about it. In any case, Maria would continue on this topic of hair looping and say, another thing I found pretty funny is that she 100% knows I'm a real artist, referring to Teru. It's obvious from looking at my work, and as I already mentioned, I've posted my old traditional pieces on Telegram, ones she has definitely seen. It's clear from them that I'm far from a beginner, and I've mentioned my university studies multiple times on my Telegram channel. Yet here, Teru keeps talking about me as if I have absolutely nothing to do with art. Teru, do you seriously think I don't know how to draw hair? Lol. Next up would be the section about Mei-chan, right? The whole 15-year-old artist that Teru claimed to be Nyanyaqwi, aka Maria. And from Maria's point of view, she really felt like there was no proof whatsoever that tied her to Mei-chan. She'd argue that Teru is only making this connection because they both use Clip Studio Paint, in which she ironically says, congratulations, according to Teru, you might as well be the owner of this account too if you use Clip Studio Paint as an artist. She'd then say, here she compares my old artwork with this person's work based on colors. Once again, she deliberately picks the most similar piece possible to make her point look stronger, and she'd argue that this evidence wasn't objective. She would end this section about Mei-chan by saying, honestly, I had seen people calling me Mei-chan before, but none of them ever provided any proof. I was hoping Teru would finally enlighten me, but alas. Jokes aside, this whole situation feels genuinely scary to me. I have nothing to do with that account, and seeing myself being accused of something I've never done while people just believe it because it's enough for them honestly brings me to tears. I simply have no idea how to prove that I don't have any secret accounts besides my main one. I wouldn't even have the time for them. I draw regularly, post art on my account. Many pieces get deleted because of the 18+ filter, but you can see all of them with the original dates for free on my Patreon. Okay, bro, nice marketing. Okay, nice marketing. And at the same time, I'm studying at university. My exams literally just ended, and even during exam period, I was still drawing and posting, even if a bit less often than usual. I know that no matter how much I try to prove I'm innocent, people will believe whoever they like more, but I don't understand why I now have to disprove an accusation that never had any solid proof to begin with. If I don't, it will look like I'm silently agreeing with it. Maybe I'm missing something? Maybe I overlooked some important detail? Do you think what Teru said is enough? I'm asking you to be honest. I'm starting to feel like I might have missed or misunderstood something, and if that's the case, I want to know. And this brings us to the final section in this document, in which Maria argues that Teru is so obsessed with AI that she's willing to go after anyone. She would dig up old screenshots about a previous altercation Teru had with an artist, in which they accused them of tracing from AI. Maria in the document would say, naturally, the accused person found out about the post and the unfair accusations directed at him, so he responded as one would expect. Teru then told him that the only way he could prove he actually draws himself was to join her in Magma. The artist agreed, and for a while the situation wasn't brought up again. Teru refused to believe the artist because he couldn't draw several poses he wasn't used to drawing without references and found them quite difficult. It's also worth mentioning that in every other aspect the artist did everything Teru asked, and they spent a total of 5 hours in Magma. This turned into a big conflict and a flood of posts from both sides. In the screenshot above, you can see the artist asking Teru to publish the full unedited video of their Magma session, since only she had the recording. Instead, the most she released was a 6-minute video that only contained dialogue and not even the actual drawing process. So this would then become a back and forth. The artist in question, the one accused, would post a full 4-hour video with a speed paint where you can clearly see his hands and the monitor. Teru would say, congratulations on your video editing skills. Next time, make sure that you really start on a new canvas and we don't see the layer you're painting from. And while the situation was messy, with constant back and forths, blocking, communities attacking each other, Maria would argue that after the third speed paint from the artist in which he recorded his second monitor as well, this finally put a definitive end to the matter, in which Teru was wrong. People began expressing outrage at her behavior, only then did she decide to resolve the conflict through private messages. So here we can see Teru saying, I reached out to clear up some misunderstandings and I apologize as it should have been done this way from the start. She would at the artist in question and say, thank you for listening to what I had to say and despite everything that happened, still being willing to resolve these matters cordially. So it seems that it was a conflict, there was problems, but it was resolved privately and both sides ended up being satisfied with the result. Even Maria admits this. Yes, the situation was eventually resolved and both sides reached a mutual agreement. But doesn't it seem strange to you that Teru only decided to apologize after she realized public opinion had turned against her? Do you remember the post where Teru said that a magma session is enough to prove that a person isn't tracing from AI? Let me remind you. It seems that this time even magma wasn't enough, and not just magma, 2 full videos weren't enough either. You'd think that when you see the evidence clearly isn't working in your favor, why not just admit you were wrong? Maria would then talk about how many of Teru's friends seem to like and retweet whatever she posts without checking anything because they blindly trust her, and would then end this by saying, I could keep taking screenshots, but there are so many that I got tired. So what's the strange thing here? It's that Teru seems genuinely obsessed with the AI topic. Almost every other post of hers directly or indirectly touches on it. She jumps into any conflicts or discussion as soon as AI is mentioned. How many artworks do you think she drew between February 7th and May 19th? 0. A person who positions herself as an artist barely draws at all, but makes a huge number of posts about AI. Of course, I understand she has her own reasons for not drawing, and who am I to lecture her about it, but no matter how many of her posts I look at, artificial intelligence appears so frequently that it starts to look like you're insecure about your own art. You say you're tired of all this negativity, yet you surround yourself with it. Don't you realize that by constantly shining a spotlight on the problem, you're only drawing more attention to these kinds of accounts? Not a single one has stopped or come to their senses after your documents, and you know that. In any case, no matter what I say in this document, I do not wish you any harm, Teru. I'm hurt by how he treated me, but at the same time, I feel very sorry that you have to exist in such an aggressive environment, even though for some reason you choose it yourself. I'm still ready at any moment to join you in Magma, invite my followers, yours if you want, and draw together. I can also do absolutely anything to prove that I draw myself. The camera idea is still on the table. If you don't want to reply to me this time either, I'll gladly invite my own followers into Magma so they can give me tasks, poses, and characters instead of you. That way, at least in front of them, I can clear my name. So at the end of the document, Maria really tried to push this idea that Teru is AI obsessed, that she witch hunts just about anyone, that because of that previous conflict, it showed that she was unreasonable when she thinks that someone's using AI. But at the same time, even though this document's close to like 100 pages, Maria failed to mention something pretty important: her relationship to Chokopaii. This wasn't even mentioned like once, barely, when she was just DMing Teru. It's as if she completely separated herself from Chokopaii. She didn't even mention how she had written Chokopai's own response on Twitter while advising her to act like a victim to make people feel bad for her. It was definitely interesting, and I'm curious to see what you think about her response. But speaking of Chokopaii, she also had a response as well, posted one day after Maria's. On June 21st, Chokopaii would post, I'm exhausted from false accusations about me. I will run a drawing live stream this week, and would then link a Google Doc. But interestingly enough, unlike Maria's document, this one would be less than 10 pages. It would start off by saying, before addressing the accusations being made against me, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I do not use AI-generated images in my artwork, nor do I trace, edit, or sell AI-generated content as my own work. My art is created by me. Like many artists, I use references, study anatomy, practice techniques, and continuously work to improve my skills. Every piece I publish reflects my own effort, experience, and artistic development. The claims that I secretly create or operate accounts dedicated to selling AI traces or AI-based artwork are false. Despite these accusations being repeated across different platforms, no credible evidence has been presented that connects me to such activities. Because misinformation has continued to spread, I feel it is necessary to address these claims directly and clarify the facts. The document would be then split into 5 different sections, starting off with AI accusations. Chokopaii would say, live drawing on Magma. In 2025, I made 2 Magma canvases with my Telegram followers. Unfortunately, they got vandalized, so I never did these events again. Here are the pieces I've made then, streaming every stroke on Magma. And so here we'd see some art that she says she drew on Magma. We saw this one in particular in Teru's document. Here are some examples of vandalism. I'm going to blur some of these words. I don't know what they mean, but there's definitely a couple penises here and there. And then it would say, hands recorded speed paint. Although Teru claims that I faked it, it is actually impossible to live record tracing in that certain video. Firstly, I use an iPhone, which doesn't have any feature that lets you green screen the AI picture to trace over it. Secondly, my hands are literally tied up. Here's the uncropped version of that video. Now, initially, she would be wearing handcuffs in the video for the first like 3 seconds, but then would just remove them and put them next to Pavel Durov's image. In any case, this uncropped video doesn't really give us a perspective that shows us whether she's actually using AR tracing or not, so it can't really be used as proof for that. She would then talk about the magic Russian AI bot. Teru claims that I used this definite Telegram AI bot called Stable Waifu, using Coquette art style to generate my art. Here is the image I tried to make using the prompt it made of my artwork. I also included Coquette art style tag. Can you see the difference? I find it obvious. So on the left, we see the art that she had posted. On the right, we see the AI generated one using the Coquette tag. To her, this is definite proof that these two are very different. I wonder what you think. We would then get to the section My Art Progress. I've been making digital art for more than 6 years now, and since 2020 I posted on socials. Unfortunately, my previous Telegram channel was shot down by doxxers, so I don't have a lot of my older artwork. My art technique was built for years. Here are some unevident tools I use in my artworks. Number 1, texture brushes. I love adding details that no one ever notices just to make it look perfectly polished. I use clothing textures, sparkles, glitter, skin, and more. For all of that, the Chinese Procreate brushes I bought, you may find them on Taobao or Xiaohongshu. And number 2, photo bash. I use this technique for making complex details like clothing, furniture, or accessories. That's how I make things look realistic. There would then be a subsection here called Some of My Drawing Process, and we would just see more sketches of drawings we've already seen before, in which Chokopaii tries to kind of show off the different techniques that were just mentioned, like photo bashing and different brushes. The second major section here would be called doxing. She'd say, this is indeed a very difficult topic for me. Because of this situation, I didn't use Russian social media for a year because I was afraid. I was getting death threats every day, I was harassed, bullied, and hated despite my requests for help and justifications. So one of the examples of doxing would be this image in which we can see rest in peace with a flower and a candle under it, and right next to it we'd see an image of what Chokopaii claims to be her mother. There were also screenshots of the Telegram channel of the doxxer who was paid by Anonymous to doxxer. She then specified Anonymous used to post lies about me on their Telegram channel. They accused me of using AI and provided bullying to me by their audience. This situation took over a year until they deleted their Telegram channel and left quietly. They used to act like a victim every time I tried to defend myself. They accused me of their mental problems, blaming me for making it worse for them. Besides, they used to spread misinformation that I doxed them without any evidence. They didn't listen to any words of mine, any supplications, they just kept going. Because of them, my personal information got leaked. My home address, my parents' contacts, my family, and much more. I have gotten death threats, my phone was blowing for messages and calls from anonymous numbers. I couldn't sleep or walk out of my home without fear, but some people still think that it's my fault somehow. Subsequently, their lies spread into Teru's document as well. I could clearly see that it was them or their friend trying to proceed with their previous actions. So look, this is horrible for just about anyone, even if you're an AI tracer or whatever. I mean, obviously, like including your family in this is definitely a step too far. Even doxing by itself is definitely too far as well. But I don't know who Anonymous is supposed to be here. All I know is just how they used the image of her mom in this. She would use the image of someone she hated that was pregnant and made fun of her and was saying, I don't care if she has a miscarriage. Is Anonymous meant to be the pregnant lady that she was making fun of constantly in her Telegram channel? I don't know. There's not enough details here to make that correlation. Point is, this is very nasty business, and regardless of whether Chokopaii was doing it to someone or someone was doing it to Chokopaii, doxing is never okay. The next section will be called Accounts. Multiple accounts aren't mine. I would like to clarify that I have no connection to the accounts that have been mentioned. The accusations are based on similarities in usernames, font choices used in signatures, and the fact that certain accounts appear to be linked to the same Google account. However, none of these points prove ownership or any involvement on my part. I mean, typically, if something is linked to the same Google account, I mean, you know, it's definitely interesting. Anyway, she would continue. Similar usernames and fonts are very common online and cannot be used as reliable evidence that multiple accounts belong to the same person. Likewise, I have no control how other users name their accounts or present their work. Okay, but when it came to Chokopaii, Teru had some pretty solid proof. Attributing old usernames to new ones, seeing name changes on Danburu, using web archive to make connections. I think it was fairly solid proof to prove the connection between those different accounts like Lavariol, Mashiro, and Chokopaii. She would then say, I do not create, operate, or manage any accounts that sell AI-generated traces or copies. My artwork is my own, and I take my work and reputation seriously. I respectfully ask that conclusions not be drawn without clear evidence. False accusations can be harmful to artists and their professional reputation. This brings us to the fourth section here, Nyanyaqwi and Miyuchi. I would also like to address the claims involving my friend Nyanyaqwi and my sister Miyuchi. Some people have suggested that they are involved simply because they are friends with me or because they interact with me online. Friendship is not evidence of wrongdoing, nor does it prove that someone shares another person's actions, methods, or artistic practices. There have also been claims that Miyuchi does not exist and is merely one of my alternate accounts. This is completely false. Miyuchi is a real person and my sister. Accusing someone of being a fake account without any evidence is both unfair and harmful. At this point, many of the accusations appear to be based on assumptions, speculation, and associations rather than verifiable facts. Similar usernames, shared social circles, or personal relationships do not constitute proof that accounts are connected or controlled by the same person. I respectfully ask that people avoid spreading claims about me, my friends, or my family without clear and reliable evidence. Everyone involved deserves to be treated fairly and judged based on facts rather than rumors. And finally, this would lead us to the final section, 5, titled Conclusion and My Final Message. Finally, I would like to address not only the person who started these accusations, Teru Pancake, but also those who choose to amplify them for attention, engagement, or profit, such as Cat and Chat, etc. Behind every account is a real person. Spreading unverified accusations may seem like entertainment or content to some people, but for the person targeted, it can have serious consequences. It damages reputations, it creates stress, harms careers, and affects real lives. For a long time, I have done my best to support fellow artists, encourage others in the community, share opportunities, and help people whenever I could. It's painful to see those efforts ignored while rumors and speculation are treated as facts. It is also painful to see these artists blocking me and texting horrible things about me after all I've done. What is happening here is not accountability. Accountability requires evidence. Repeating accusations, making assumptions, and building content around someone's alleged wrongdoing without proof only contributes to harassment and misinformation. If your goal is truly to protect artists and the art community, then fairness, honesty, and evidence should matter more than views, clicks, engagement, or financial gain. Turning someone's hardship into content may be profitable, but that does not make it right. I ask everyone involved to consider the impact of their actions, stop spreading unsupported claims, and remember that real people are affected by these accusations every day. I will continue creating art, supporting other artists, and standing by the truth, regardless of how many times these rumors are repeated. There would then be another page here that is completely empty, so I guess it was just left out by mistake, but that would be the gist of it. Chokopaii feels like there's not enough proof or evidence that connects her to the other accounts mentioned in Teru's document, and argues that the AI bot that Teru was accusing her of using just couldn't generate the same images that she was, well, drawing or generating, whatever you might believe at this point. After posting the document on Twitter, Chokopaii would post this on her story on Instagram, saying, "To everyone accusing me of using AI, I've put together a Google Doc addressing the main accusations and questions I've received. The link is attached to this story. I choose to block people who accuse me rather than argue endlessly in the comments. It's simply much better for my mental well-being. Later, I'll share a link to a Twitch stream recording showing me drawing in magma in real time. To everyone who supports me, thank you so much. And to those who still have doubts, I encourage you to look through the materials and watch the stream before making any conclusions." Now, I tried to find the Twitch stream in question or even her Twitch channel, but she doesn't even have it on her own card website. So I'm not sure where that is or if she did it already, but the point is, I couldn't find this proof of hers. However, just as Teru had predicted, this hasn't stopped her from continuing to post on her Chokopaii account, with the most recent post being on June 27th, 2026, garnering quite a bit of engagement and even advertising her Patreon in the replies. Nyanyaqwi would also do the same thing, posting her most recent art on June 25th, 2026, also getting great engagement. Look, overall, regardless of whether these two artists are using AI or not, if you were insane enough to watch this entire video up until this point, then you'd know it's getting very hard to tell what's real and what's not. It's getting very complex to determine who you can trust and who you can't trust. So if there's one positive thing to take from this whole thing, is that now there's a document written by Teru that is purely made to educate you on what to look for when you try and commission an artist. As I had mentioned prior, this will be in the description and the pinned comment of this video. That way you can take a look at it for yourself and hopefully not get scammed if you do decide to finally commission your first artist. So that's great news. And for old time's sake, when it comes to Asami, she has made a new account, initially calling it Hina, then renaming it to Rinawa, but very recently she deactivated it. It seems to be some sort of a trend. She deactivates, comes back with a new design, deactivates, and does it again. But one thing is consistent here, and that's the fact that she wants her new account to be focused on lolly content. Maybe because she's hoping that when she's caught again, the extremely passionate lolly community will brigade anyone that has anything negative to say about her and keep her in business. Who knows? One thing I do know though is that she did create a Patreon account, so a Patreon page should be inevitable at this point. Anyways, thank you so much for watching until the end. You're insane, you're crazy, you're absolutely bonkers. I love you platonically. One of my favorite animes is Bleach, and right now Gamersubs has an awesome collab going on. Use the code Mugen for 10% off to get your Bleach flavor. If you want to see exclusive content from me, then definitely check out my Stack page. It's like Patreon but better. And I'll see you in the next video whenever that is. Take care out there and don't get scammed. Mwah!